What does she even see in that loser? That was the only thing running through Andrew's head as he closed the latest volume of high school DxD. Romonus Gremory, the main heroine, had to be insane for falling in love with Issei Hayudu, of all people. Even after finishing the series, Andrew couldn't wrap his head around it. Issei was weird, sure, but he was also the luckiest guy in fiction. He tossed the book onto his bed and slumped back in his gaming chair. It's anime logic, I guess, but still, he muttered. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing in thought. DxD was one of those worlds that could either be heaven or hell. As long as you weren't a nameless mob, you'd live surrounded by beautiful devils, angels, and fallen women. But if you were a mob, good luck. Issei just happened to have maxed out dragon riz. Andrew stood up and glanced in the mirror. His reflection grinned back. A tall, muscular 17-year-old, 6'3", and ripped from years of gym time. Man, if I were in his spot, I'd do way better. Look at me. He flexed, admiring the shape of his shoulders and abs. He wasn't into sports, but working out had always been his thing. If I had powers, I'd bench press a planet like Superman. A voice answered from nowhere. Is that a fact? Andrew froze. That wasn't his imagination. He spun around, scanning his empty room. What the? Before he could even move, the world twisted. The next moment, he was sitting in front of a desk. A man in a business suit sat across from him, flipping through a glowing file. His golden eyes gleamed unnaturally, and a jagged scar cut down the right side of his face. Welcome, Andrew, the man said. I am Ravdal, god of insanity. Andrew blinked. You're not here to drive me insane, right? Ravdal gave him a flat look. No, we lesser gods run what you might call reincarnation programs. We send people like you to other worlds. Sometimes you humans say the right keywords, and poof, you get chosen. That's it. Just some magic phrase, and I'm picked. Pretty much. The god closed the file. You're a good candidate. Tall, strong, decent IQ. You'll do nicely. He leaned forward, eyes glinting. Now, you said something about DxD? Andrew raised an eyebrow. You mean high school DxD? Yes. That world. Interested. Do I get powers? 1. Andrew crossed his arms. What's the catch? Ravdal's grin widened, his voice dripping with mischief. Smart kid. In exchange, I want chaos. Break the fate of that world. Rewrite it. Every time you defy destiny, I grow stronger. You get to live your dream, and I get a feast. Andrew chuckled. That's actually fair. But how about a twist? Oh, Ravdal tilted his head. Go on. Don't just drop me in DxD. Make me Romonus Gremory's twin brother. That alone will shake things up. I'll have her bloodline powers. I'll be part of the main family. And fate will start cracking on its own. The god's grin turned feral. Clever boy. I like it. Then your name will be Romonus Gremory. Now, what's your wish? Andrew smirked. I want gravity magic, like Demon Lord Wilbert from the Testament of Sister New Devil. The air warped. Ravdal's face twisted, morphing into something that barely resembled a man. Done. Andrew. No. Romonus, do your worst. I expect great things. Andrew grinned back. You will. Everything went black. When his eyes opened again, he was being born. And it was awful. Consciousness during birth was like being crushed from every direction. So this is what reincarnation feels like. He could faintly hear voices. The first of the twins is a boy, my lady. Through blurry newborn eyes, he saw a beautiful devil woman, Venelana Gremory, exhausted but glowing. Dear, hold him while I pass the second, she said. Her husband, Zeoticus, took the crying baby in his arms, Andrew's new father. The man looked almost exactly like he did in the anime, minus the beard. The heir to the Gremory clan, Zeoticus said proudly. Your name shall be Romonus Gremory. Romonus, huh? That's actually badass, he thought. I'll take it. Moments later, Rias was born, his crimson-haired twin. The midwife, another stunning devil woman, used a quick spell to clean and calm them both. Venelana smiled weakly, pressing the two infants against her chest. Twins, a rare blessing. Zeoticus nodded. Sirzex will be thrilled. He now has 2 younger siblings. He looked down at Romonus, noting his dark hair and bright violet eyes. He's taken after your father's side. The Bale blood runs strong. Venelana laughed softly. And Rias looks like a little Surzex. Perfect balance. Life as a devil infant was oddly nice. Romonus spent his early months pampered by maids, nursed by wet nurses, and doted on by Venelana whenever she had time. Devil women, as he learned quickly, were absurdly attractive, and he wasn't blind, even in a baby's body. Man, I've seen more boobs in 1 year than most men in a lifetime, he thought proudly. He noticed something else, too. Every feeding left him buzzing with energy. Devil physiology was clearly magical, and their milk probably carried demonic essence. Whatever the reason, he felt stronger each day. By 7 months, he was walking. By 1 year, he was ready to start training. He had 2 powers to master, power of destruction and gravity magic, and he wasn't about to waste time. One night, while Rias slept in her crib, he sat cross-legged on the couch, eyes closed. He visualized red energy flowing through him, his demonic power awakening for the first time. A faint crimson aura flickered around his tiny body. He focused, pushing it inward instead of out, letting it circulate through his veins. His body burned, every muscle trembling like he'd finished a brutal workout. When the pain peaked, he let go. The aura faded, leaving him sweaty and exhausted, but satisfied. Not bad, he thought, smiling faintly. At this rate, I'll have it mastered by 4. He climbed back into his crib and drifted off beside his sleeping sister, the beginnings of power humming quietly beneath his skin. After unlocking his demonic energy, Romonus decided to keep it a secret, at least for now. Thankfully, that wasn't too difficult. The Gremory manor constantly pulsed with magical energy. Every maid, butler, and servant used spells throughout the day, and layered wards filtered out minor fluctuations. What he was doing, quietly training in the corner of a nursery, barely registered as a spark in the grand scheme of things. At 1 year old, he was still being breastfed by wet nurses, though Venelana had stopped herself due to her duties as Lady Gremory. She tried to spend as much time as possible with her twins, but managing a noble household left little room for personal time. As for Zeoticus, the man was either drowning in paperwork or busy with his harem. Romonus had to admit, his father had impeccable taste. Every maid in the manor was stunning, each with that classic devilish allure. Some of them even doubled as wet nurses, which, for Romonus, made infancy a lot more entertaining than it had any right to be. He'd even met his older brother, Surzex, and Graphia Lucifuge, the infamous queen of Lucifer. That had been a mixed experience. Part of him had hoped she'd be single, like in the fanfics, but alas, Canon remained intact. Sad days, he thought. Still, he respected Surzex too much to even think about poaching. Nighttime was when the real work began. While Rias slept peacefully in her crib, Romonus sat cross-legged on the couch, channeling his energy through his tiny body. Back on Earth, he'd read enough cultivation stories and mana systems to fill a library. Now he was putting all that meta-knowledge to use. For weeks, he'd practiced feeling his energy flow, circulating it, containing it, then releasing it. But now he wanted precision. He focused, extending a thread of crimson light from his palm. His goal, form his demonic energy into a string. The string method, as he called it, came from a Harry Potter fanfic where wizards trained fine mana control. The concept was simple. Form thin threads of energy, stretch them farther and farther, and maintain multiple at once. Simple, on paper. In practice, not so much. A cloud of red energy leaked from his body, flickering and shapeless. Romonus frowned, focusing harder. Condense, don't disperse. Slowly, the cloud began to pull inward, thinning into a rope-like line. It wasn't perfect, patchy, unstable, but it was progress. He kept at it for a week, day after day, night after night. His natural demonic reserves were enormous thanks to his parents' bloodlines, and every time he ran out, the recovery left him stronger. By the end of that week, the first true string of demonic energy coiled around his hand. Finally, he whispered. Now came the fun part. Keeping the string stable required constant flow, like balancing pressure in a pipe. He pushed the energy farther across the room, testing his control. The farther it went, the heavier it felt, but it held. One string down, he thought. Now let's see how far I can take this. He practiced every night, building up to 2 strings, then 3, then 10. Each one moved independently, wrapping around chairs, books, and random objects in nursery. By the time he was 3 years old, he could control 20 at once, weaving them into shapes and patterns. His energy was smoother, denser, stronger. While he honed his skills, Rias enjoyed being spoiled. Their parents adored her. The maids doted on her, and even Surzex couldn't resist picking her up every time he visited. Romonus didn't mind. It gave him space to work without eyes watching. Still, Zeoticus seemed proud of him. Having a son with strong magic potential meant the Gremory bloodline was secured. With Surzex tied up as Lucifer, Romonus's birth had restored balance to the family. When they both turned 3, they were finally assigned a tutor. The lessons were basic: reading, writing, counting, and light devil history. Rias found it boring. Romonus didn't. The history of the devil clans fascinated him, especially how deeply politics and bloodlines controlled everything. If he was going to break this world's fate, he'd need more than strength. He'd need knowledge. That's why, once lessons ended, he started sneaking into the library. The Gremory library was massive, easily bigger than his entire high school back on Earth. The first time he entered, he had to stand on a chair just to reach the lower shelves. He devoured everything he could find: grimoires, bestiaries, maps, even herbology texts. Devils weren't big on potion making, but he saw potential there. Brewing custom potions could fund his future experiments. Power, money, knowledge, he thought. The 3 pillars of freedom. Meanwhile, Zeoticus sat in his office, buried under financial reports and correspondence. He was halfway through a document when a familiar maid entered. "Markina," he said, smiling knowingly. "Always a pleasure." She bowed politely, though her tone was formal. "Before anything else, my lord, there's something I must report about your son, Romonus." Zeoticus straightened. "Is he all right?" "He's fine," Markina assured. "But he's in the library. Reading." He raised a brow. "Reading what?" "Picture books." Markina shook her head. "Ritual manuals, bestiaries, herbology texts, and geography charts." Zeoticus blinked. "He's 3. "I know," she said. "I asked him why, and he said I have to. That was all." Zeoticus rubbed his chin, a mix of pride and confusion crossing his face. "Maybe it's time to bring in an instructor early. He's showing initiative." Markina smiled faintly. "Whatever you think best, my lord." "Good. And now," Zeoticus smirked, leaning back. "Come here." Her polite expression melted into a knowing smile as she began unbuttoning her uniform. "Of course, my lord." While Zeoticus handled his stress relief, Romonus had moved on to studying advanced control methods. The book confirmed what he'd already discovered. There was no universal technique. Each devil had their own way of shaping their energy. His string method wasn't standard, but it worked, and that was enough. When he finally returned the books to their shelves, he felt the familiar spark of progress. But before he could leave, one of the maids appeared. "Young master, Lord Zeoticus would like to see you." Minutes later, Romonus stood in his father's office. "Romonus, my boy," Zeoticus greeted, kneeling to his level. "I wanted to ask, do you like learning?" Romonus nodded, smiling shyly. "Uh-huh. Fun." Zeoticus chuckled. "How about a teacher, then? Someone who can show you real magic." Romonus's eyes lit up. Like boom. "Magic." He threw his hands up, mimicking an explosion. Zeoticus laughed heartily. "Exactly that. I'll find you someone good. Give me a week or 2. "Okay," Romonus said brightly, hugging his father before darting off. As the door closed, Zeoticus sat back in his chair, smiling. That boy's going to be something else. Back in his room, Romonus sat by the window, watching the crimson sky fade over the Gremory estate. Rias was out with their mother, giving him a rare moment of peace. He glanced at his hands, feeling the demonic energy hum beneath his skin. Power of destruction. gravity magic, two forces capable of leveling cities if mishandled. He smirked. I'll take my time. When I finally use them, it won't be to shake the world. He clenched his tiny fist. It'll be to break its fate.
Hey everyone, welcome to FanFic Canon. Thanks for hitting play. I'm thrilled to bring this fan-made story to life for you. If you enjoy the ride and want more narrated fanfics, smash, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want audiobook of a novel of your choice, join my Patreon. Request any title that's freely available online, and I'll produce a full narration just for you. Now, let's dive into today's adventure.
The next 2 weeks were the same as usual for Romonus. He spent a lot of his time training in control over his demonic energy, strengthening his body, and learning in the library. He had memories of a few useful rituals he would use later on, which would give him useful abilities. Of course, when he was older, he was far from skilled enough to use any of them. But at the 2-week mark, Zeoticus called him from the library to his office. Romonus closed the ritual book he had been reading after memorizing a few useful rituals. He put the books back before he ran to his father's office. When he opened the door, Zeoticus was talking with a beautiful woman. Romonus, remember when I said I would get you an instructor? I found you a good one. Her name is Petelia Dardanius, a reincarnated devil mage. Image here. Romonus gave a polite bow to her. Hello, I am Romonus. She smiled as she kneeled to be at his eye level. You are quite polite, Romonus. As your father said, I will be in charge of your education until you're 5 years old, and I will teach you all I know, including how to use your powers. By the way, Lord Gremory, it seems his demonic power is active. How did she dash? He got his answer when he saw her eyes covered in a magic circle. She had scanned him, and she had seen that his demonic energy was not stagnant. Zeoticus turned to him. Son, have you been using your powers? Yes. It was easy. He raised his hand as he pictured his demonic energy combusting into fire. In his hand, a large flame began to burn. Petelia analyzed his level of control and found it to be very good for his age. You are quite talented at that. Lord Gremory, does the boy have his bloodline abilities? He does. Both Bale and Gremory. We tested him at birth. Has he ever used his power of destruction then? No, we told him to not use it. It is dangerous for a boy like him to use it. Petelia hummed as he turned off the fire. I can work with this. I will teach him what I know and how to use his powers, including his bloodline abilities. Is this all right? Zeoticus looked at Romonus, who had made his eyes look as cute as he could. Please, Dad. Zeoticus smiled as he relented. All right. Romonus smiled as he ran to his father, who caught him in a hug. Zeoticus turned to Petelia, who already planning what to instruct Romonus and how to train him. Will you only instruct Romonus only, or Rias as well? She turned to Zeoticus with a polite smile. You only paid for Romonus. Zeoticus cleared his voice. In that case, I can pay the same for you to instruct her. In that case, yes, but if she is slower than Romonus, you need to understand that. Of course. Petelia then turned to Romonus. Are you ready for your first lesson in magic? Yes, ma'am. Follow me then. Romonus waved goodbye to his dad as he followed the magician lady. As they were walking, she kept quiet as she was going to see how he used his magic to plan out a training regiment. He was just happy to get a proper instructor now rather than guessing his way through. Romonus, I want to ask you, what kind of devil do you want to become? He thought about it, as he always wanted to use a sword or some other weapon. A sword mage. He could use magic from up close, long range, or getting close and personal to hack and dice. I can teach you the magic aspect, but for swords, I would ask your brother's knight. Lord Surzex has the strongest peerage in the underworld after all. Cool. Petelia led him back to the library where she asked him to sit down. First, we will talk about human magic and then devil magic. For humans, we require calculations that are based on devil magic. But devils only require imagination and control over their energy. Of course, being unimaginative will weaken your magic, so get creative. Today we will just go over what you know. Romonus nodded as he sat down in his chair, as he always did, in his cultivator pose with his hands on his legs. As he did so, From his body, he began to release the energy which formed his strings again. By this point, he had 20, but the 21st was uneven. Petelia seemed quite surprised to see what he was doing, so she asked him about this. "What is this?" "My training. I can see the merit. Each string is a line of your power, and to keep it steady takes up energy from you. You also train in multitasking and control." "Who taught you this?" He smiled proudly as he answered. "Me." Now she looked surprised. Controlling 20 different lines of energy could not be easy, and he was making it seem effortless. When she considered his young age, it was amazing. "You invented this method." He nodded with a smile. "All me." She smiled as she realized her job would be easier than she expected. "That makes things easier if you have your method. I have a few spells that could help with your multitasking or even your overall control. But for what I can see, you only have trained in control and not in using it. I will remedy that. Are you ready?" "Yes." "Excellent. I will teach you one I used as a mage apprentice. Form a fire floating in front of you." He focused as his strings dissipated, but the energy in them gathered and formed a small fire. Once it was burning, she crossed her arms, orbited around your body. Romonus did as she instructed, which was a training method in another story. As she watched how easily he did it, add more until you begin to have trouble. He created more balls of fire, which kept orbiting around him. He eventually stopped at 16, as controlling any more was becoming increasingly tricky. Seeing how well he was making them spin impressed her. "Incredible control. You can stop." He snuffed out the fires as she smiled. "You will certainly be a terrifying devil in the future if this is how good you are as a 3-year-old. Here is to hope your sister is just as skillful." Doubtful. Seeing his weirded-out expression, Petelia realized something. She doesn't even know how to use her power, does she? He nodded, causing her to sigh. "This is going to be annoying, won't it?" He nodded with a chuckle. Seeing how happy he was made her smile. "Well then, we got time." This was how Romonus got introduced to proper magic and information. Rias ended up getting dragged along with him, but just as Petelia had said, she was a headache. She always wanted to run off and play. She would dose off, and she did not like her head hurting, which was going to happen when using her magic. But since she was getting paid, Petelia endured the spoiled nature of noble children like Rias. Often Romonus was the opposite as he sat still in his lectures. He did not get off, and he listened. Rias only lasted in her lessons for a month before she was excused out of lack of interest by her father. Zeodicus was disappointed, but since Rias was 3, it was to be expected. Romonus was just an outlier since he was not an actual child. But, just as Petelia had recommended, Romonus asked his older brother Surzex if his knight Suji could train him in sword fighting. Petelia only was his instructor for 2 years before she was no longer needed, as Surzex got someone better to teach him. His bishop, MacGregor Mathers, was considered one of, if not the best mage in the underworld. Petelia did not mind, as she still got paid, and she felt she had gotten him ready on his path. He thanked her for her time, and he never saw her again after that. Instead, his time was consumed by Suji, who trained him in the art of the sword, Mathers in magic, and Surtr second in physical combat. The 3 servants of his older brother were always open to mentoring him, as he was open to learning everything they had to teach. He had come a long way since the early days when he was working on getting a feel for his energy, as now he had it under control. He was a different beast than when he had been born, and it showed. Romonus flipped open his journal as he sat in a fancy chair in his room. He and Rias no longer shared a room, as he had asked to have his room 5 years ago. It had been granted, and Rias rarely went into his room. His room had everything he could need, a shelf for books, and workout equipment constructed out of demonic energy. He also had a custom alchemy and chemistry set in one. He also had a weapon rack where he could place the swords that he created, like the one resting at his side. It was heavier than most long swords, but not quite a great sword. Suji had wanted him to use a katana, but he was much more partial to the heavy style of a heavier than normal long sword. He had made it himself out of magisteel, which he had forged from metal he had soaked in his blood, compressed with gravity, tempered in power of destruction, and forged in fire fueled by his demonic energy. Thanks to that, the sword could resist the power of destruction. Image here. Over the years, when Cert or Second learned of his affinity for gravity magic, he had forced him to use it on himself like in Dragon Ball, or the knockoff version that existed in DxD, which he could not remember the name of. It had led him to have an incredible physique for one as young as him, which had been forged by Cert and Suji. Just as he was reading through a few rituals he had been planning on undergoing, the door to his room opened. He glanced up and saw that it was a maid. He had not learned her name, as she was just another one of his father's girls. There were hundreds of them, and each one as forgettable as the last. "What is it?" She bowed politely toward him. "Young master, today is your 11th birthday, and the madam is asking you to present yourself to the guests when they arrive." He grunted as he reached out for his sword. "She also asked you to not bring the sword and to dress in more formal attire. You are always in your battle attire, and she feels you will look better in formal wear for your birthday." His outfit. He glanced up with a squint in his eyes which caused them to glow a deep purple. It was not a trick he had actively created, as it had started to happen when he got annoyed or angry. Mathers assumed it was because of the constant circulation and purity of his energy. At this point, by relying on his bloodline and extreme training, he had already entered the ultimate class. Being the son of Venelana Bale, Romonus Gremory, and his stronger soul, thanks to being a reincarnator, he grew his power quickly. Of course, he was going through the same issue that Rias went through in Canon, as everyone said it was because of his clan, his brother, or his parents. He ignored such statements as they were just that. Statements. "All right, you can go." This maid had just been added to the harem half a year ago for her great body, but it was worthless to him. Her power was less than even a low-class devil, as she was just a commoner devil who was lucky to be pretty. Of course, she ran out of the room in fear, as Romonus over the years had become very proud of his power. He disliked those who did not improve themselves and relied on others. Like the maid who ran out as she got some status by sucking off his father now and then. Honestly, Dad is a lucky guy. Hundreds of women are all for him, and no one can tell him that is wrong. Then again, he is effectively a king as a clan lord. Can't be me, though. And when he got his harem, he did not want a bunch of weaklings. He wanted women to have some significance instead of dime a dozen maids like his father's. Sure, they were hot, but he was sure if he asked they would fuck him in a heartbeat. They were after status, not love, while he was after power. He had not forgotten why he was here. He was here to change the canon and make a nuisance of himself. He had 7 more years until he was 18 when the canon started. He felt he had prepared enough, and it was time for him to begin to cause the chaos he had promised. He grabbed his sword and placed it into his spatial ring. He was going to not bring it this time around for his mother's sake. He waved his hands and instantly removed his outfit, which he placed onto a mannequin to hold it. He then placed a hand on his chest, and dense demonic energy began to flow over his body, which he quickly formed into a fancy suit. Image here. He modeled it after John Wick's suit, as it was a classic and one he quite liked. He quickly looked himself in the mirror and smiled as he had become a good-looking guy. Sure, he was only 11, but the next 4 years were changing him greatly. One of the best uses of demonic energy, in his opinion, was that they could change their appearances on whims. His mother, Venelana, actively made herself look to be in her early 20s. His uncle Lord Bale kept his appearance to be in his middle ages. His grandfather, for some reason, made himself look old, while the only thing he used it for was to remove his childlike features, which made him look more mature than his actual age. He was not tall, but certainly tall for his age, as he was 5 feet 5 inches. Since today was his 11th birthday, he was certainly a tall kid. "Here is to hoping we have a normal day." Romonus walked out of his room, which he locked with a key. He hated people going anyone in his room, which was why it was usually locked. The new maid didn't know this fact, but she had found him in a good mood. Regardless, he placed his hands at his side and began to walk toward the ballroom where everything was going to take place. As he walked through the halls of the manor, he sometimes passed servants, maids, butlers, and the like who would bow to him. They also gave him the room he desired. He was not known for his friendly demeanor, but he was respectful to them when they did speak to him. This was a subject of disagreement between Romonus and Venelana. Romonus felt it was a great mentality for a future lord, while Venelana didn't think being closed off like him was healthy. Rias, on the other hand, was a subject of scrutiny because of him. He showed off his talent quite openly, and several marriage proposals were sent his way because of his power. Even his uncle, Lord Bale, and grandfather Demonidas Bale placed their backing with him. For one, he took after their clan almost exclusively without a hint of Gremory crimson in his hair. His proud temperament was written off as the Bale blood running strong in his veins. As for Rias, she seldom, if ever, trained like him. That was the scrutiny, as he had never slacked off, which led to his power exceeding what a devil his age would have. Meanwhile, Rias was childish, so she was treated like most females. A bargaining chip, while he was seen as an extraordinary heir. Two twins who were as different as the sea and sky. Romonus eventually made his way into the massive ballroom, which was being used for the birthday celebration. His parents had gone all out as he and Rias were entering their teenage years. They had invited as many of the pillars who were all going to be coming. This was also going to be used to assess Rias and his worth as a marriage candidate. He, of course, would crush any attempt to force him to marry, but Rias was another story. He, of course, planned to help as she was his sister, and he wanted her when she got older. For four reasons. First of all, it would fuck with Riser. Second, it would fuck with Issei. Third, it would fuck up Canon. Fourth, she was going to be a hottie, and while she may be his sister, she wasn't his sibling in his mind. When he entered the ballroom, all eyes went to him as they were still getting ready. Today was the birthday, and they were finishing things for when the guests arrived. Venelana was organizing a few final details, but when she saw the way he was dressed, she got happy. "Romonus, look at you, my handsome boy." She walked over to him and hugged him, causing his face to be pressed into her cleavage. "Still great. Well, this is a ball, so I felt I should dress to impress. Still, is it too fancy?" She shook her head as she let him go. "No, it's perfect. It will stand out among the traditional clothes of devil nobility. Zeoticus, what do you think?" Zeoticus looked his son over before he walked over. He smiled proudly as he placed a hand on Romonus' shoulder. "You're growing into an incredible young man, son." Romonus smiled as he truly loved his parents. "Thank you. Here is to another birthday." Zeoticus smiled with a curious smile. "Yes, we have a surprise for you later, my son, but you will have to wait." Romonus was now curious, but he did not ask. "All right." Zeoticus at moments like this thought back to when the knight, mage, and rook of Surzex agreed to train Romonus. He was overjoyed. It had honed Romonus into a powerful young man, but it came at a cost. He had become cold and distant with a pride that burned hot. His maids had more than once come to him, saying they were terrified of Romonus, though he was a respectful young man when it came to his family. "Enjoy yourself, son." Romonus bowed once before he turned around and walked off. He seldom spoke at these events, not because he was shy, but because most nobles had terrible personalities. He hated those slimy pricks, so he disliked events like this like the plague. If he had his way, his birthday would be spent with a big family-only feast. But when one was a noble, that luxury was lost on them. Instead, he sat down at a random table where he closed his eyes to pass the time. Despite being seated and seemingly doing nothing, he was in reality training. He was circulating his massive demonic energy reserve through his entire body, including his muscles, bones, circulatory system, and nervous system. Just by doing this, his body improved much faster, and he at least hoped his bloodline became pure. He did not know if this was true, as while he was starting to focus on human science, it wasn't exactly easy to learn of an artificial race like devils. While he distracted himself, Rias was currently in her room bubbling away as several maids got her ready for her party. "I can't wait." One of the maids smiled as she worked on Rias' dress. "You will look breathtaking, my lady. If only your brother would let us near him to dress him up. He always dresses himself." Rias stopped smiling when she heard that. She was always being compared to her two brothers, Surzex and Romonus. It wasn't always good things said, as on their 10th birthday, her grandfather, Demonidas, told her she was embarrassing the Bale clan with her open weakness. She had just been having a good time when he had told her that ruining the night. When she told her motor later that night, Venelana had been angry but had not said anything to her father. Instead, Rias had been told that Demonidas was stuck in his ways and to ignore what he said. Ria's parents had worked hard to let her have a normal childhood, as normal as it could be as a noble lady of the Gremory clan. Only now that she was 11 was she beginning to understand what it meant to be a noble. Already, she was getting swarmed with marriage proposals. She had wanted nothing to do with them, as she had wanted to end up falling in love and marrying who she chose. Her brother Romonus told her that she was delusional if she thought that she had that right. It was a privilege that she would have to earn, and she could have if she trained with him. She had joined him on one of his training sessions on a much easier schedule and quit. She couldn't handle Suji, Surtur, and Mathers all pushing her the way they did. Being spoiled all her life, she could barely endure their heartless training. Even worse was when she saw Romonus training, which disheartened her. She could never catch up to him or her older brother Surzex. The day Romonus entered the ultimate class, the whole family celebrated. Even her brother Surzex said that Romonus was on his way to surpass him, without realizing that it put more pressure on Rias, who started to feel inadequate. She had pulled away instead of doing what she needed. She ran away into delusion. Am I an embarrassment? Okay, your dress is ready. Her maid smiled as she looked Rias over. You will make a lovely bride one day, my lady. Hearing those words filled her with a sense of dread. Bride? What do you mean? The maid tilted her head confused. You don't know? Today, your father will decide your groom-to-be. That is why all of the lords of the pillars will be in attendance. Today, it shall be known who you will marry. Isn't that wonderful? Ria's face pulled back in horror, but the maid just walked to the door to open it. Come along. Your family must be waiting. Rias did not talk as she was led to the ballroom. Her mind was still stuck on the news she had heard that she would be assigned a groom. She couldn't help but think back to her brother Romonus' words. Marriage for nobles are all arranged, and if you don't want the same, you better be strong enough to enforce your will. He is right. When she entered the ballroom, she saw her mother and father smiling in her direction. She also saw Romonus sitting at a table with his eyes closed. He opened them as soon as Rias entered the room. He stood up and walked toward her. Leave. I need to speak to my sister. The maids bowed at his words. Of course, sir. The maids gave them distance and went to help with the final setups. Once they were alone, Romonus crossed his arms as he could see it in her face. She knew. The maids let it slip, didn't they? Rias gripped her dress as she looked at the ground. You knew. He nodded. It was going to happen. I tried to warn you many times, and I even tried to get you to get stronger to avoid this. You are lucky you won't be married until you turn 18, giving you 7 years. You have 7 years left from the start of your engagement to grow as strong as possible to get out of it. Rias looked up with hope in her eyes. I get 7 years, thanks to me and our brother. If it were up to the nobles, you would be married off in 4. Would you rather be married then? Because I can tell them to move it up. She shook her head with happiness in her eyes. Brother, I won't slack off anymore. I won't cry. I will do anything you tell me. Help me get stronger. Romonus was not so sure about that. Are you sure you are not going to quit? The last time I managed to get you to train, you were crying after 30 minutes, and by the hour you were done. And then again, your marriage is your fault after all. He looked up with crossed arms as he feigned being uninterested. Rias ran forward and grabbed his suit. She looked up at him with her blue eyes teary. I promise I won't quit. I will do anything. He looked down at her and smiled before placing a hand on her head. All right, because I'll be damned if I have to watch you be married off like that. You have too much talent to be allowed to just be married to some random noble cunt like that. Rias finally started to see the truth in what her brother had been telling her. She had just been too blind to notice. Romonus did not realize that this simple change in mentality in Rias had sent fate into a mad spiral, because she was the main heroine of the chosen one of the world. Such a simple thing already caused the fate of the world to change in such a way. Ravdal was already starting to feed on the chaos. Romonus' boss was quite pleased as things were starting to pick up pace. Issei's destined one was already leaving him, and the changes that would occur as a result would be all encompassing. And Romonus was all for it. Romonus smiled as he had a soft spot for Rias, at least the one who was his sister. She was family, and despite his less than pure love for her, he truly cared. Now that she was going to begin to train, he could begin to grow their relationship past just siblings. However, It would have to wait as he walked Rias over to their parents. She was still holding his arm now, as he would be the one to present her. Zeoticus and Venelana smiled when they saw both of their children. Rias looked especially adorable in her crimson dress, while Romonus in his suit looked dashing. Rias let go of his arm as she rushed to hug their parents. Zeoticus reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. Everything should be ready. Now we just wait for our guest. Romonus nodded as he got ready to once again face the politics of his new life. Until then, he spent the time talking with Rias about how he was going to help her train. Of course, nice and easy because he was not lying to himself that she was weak-willed. About 45 minutes later, as he was leaning on a wall with Rias, was when their older brother Serzex arrived. He had come with Graphia, but she had not come as his maid, but rather as his wife. With them, they had their son Milicas, who was 3 years old. Seeing his oldest son arrive, Zeoticus walked over with a smile. Serzex, it is wonderful to see you. You are so busy with work these days. Serzex chuckled as he shook his father's hand. Well, being the Devil King has its cons. I have been wanting to quit, you know. Graphia frowned as he often said this. Serzex, please think of your status and what that would mean before you make any decisions like this. He laughed a bit more. Come on, Graphia. I would have more time for Milicas that way. And who could forget my siblings? Rias had already run from Romonus' side. Brother. She jumped into Serzeka's arms as he hugged her tightly. Rias, you are as adorable as always. Thank you. As Serzex was spoiling Rias, Romonus grinned as he pulled his sword out of his spatial ring. His demonic energy surged through his body, especially his legs, as he charged forward. He used the technique taught to him by Suji, Godspeed. Of course, he was much slower than his teacher, but he was insanely quick. Serzex, though, smiled as he tilted his head a little and dodged his swing. He let go of Rias as he turned to his younger brother. Romonus, I am hurt. Romonus smiled at his brother. Save it. You're a super devil. A little cut from a twig, such as this would be fine. Now hold still. He charged back and began to slice and dice with his blade, which Venelana wanted to stop. Zeoticus raised a hand, as this happened every time. Serzex, without boosting his capabilities with demonic energy, avoided every swing with ease. Romonus squinted his eyes as he drew his gravity magic to reduce the effect of gravity on him. His speed practically doubled as he leapt in the air and swung down with both arms. Serzex, without missing a beat, raised his hands and caught the blade with his hands, stopping Romonus in his tracks. Romonus grit his teeth as he pulled with all his might, but his sword would not budge. Damn it all! Serzex laughed as he let go of the sword. You have grown stronger since the last time we sparred. Keep it up and the day will come when you will defeat me. Romonus smiled at the encouraging words. Count on it, because your throne will be mine one day. I will be the next Lucifer. Romonus pulled his sword back and placed it back in his spatial ring. He had made it his goal to be able to defeat Serzex, as he was using him as a placeholder for Rise of him. If he could beat his brother, Serzex, he could beat the slimy prick of Rise of him. Hearing his words made Serzex smile. He placed a hand on his shoulder. You could do anything you put your mind to, Romonus. You have the drive and dedication to achieve your dreams. If you aim to grow strong enough to defeat me, I know you will achieve your dream. Of course, I won't make it easy for you. Romonus laughed as he hugged Serzex. Thanks for the pep talk. Rias smiled as she heard what Serzex told Romonus. What about me? If I train hard, will I become strong enough? Serzex began to think about it before he ruffled her hair. Of course. All you need to do is put your mind to it and work for it. Right, Graphia? Graphia nodded. I can see it happening considering you have begun to slack these days. How does it feel that an 11-year-old has more drive than you? Ouch, Graphia. Cutting a little deep there, don't you think? No. Hold Milicas for me, won't you? She handed Milicas over to her husband before she stepped over to Romonus. She reached out and pulled on his cheeks. With her Satan-class strength, it even hurt him despite his power. Ow! When she let go, she had a smirk on her face. That's what you get for attacking my husband. He rubbed his cheeks as he called her out on it. You do it all the time, unprovoked. That's different. Different? Because you're old. With a frown, Graphia bonked him on the head, leaving his mind rattled. She walked off with a huff as he was left to rub his head. "Brother, your wife is crazy." Serzex chuckled nervously as he could feel her glaring at him. "You think so?" "I do." Romonus shrugged and walked off. Once Serzex arrived, the other guests began to arrive one after the other. The Gremory Manor was massive, and the ballroom where the party was being held was just as big. Romonus began to observe as lords and ladies from the clans began to gather. He counted off the clans he saw, as there were 32 that still existed out of the 72. They ranged from Lord Bale, his wife, and his son Madrigan Bale. Saror was still exiled and never brought to these gatherings. Lord Agiras and his daughter Sikvera Agars. There were many more, but he only recognized a few from the story. He even saw that slimy prick Diodora, who had his signature smile on his face. Just seeing it made Romonus interested in ripping his heart out. Using it as an ingredient in a ritual would be a good use of such a rotten thing. He was not using it. Hold on, let's think this carefully. Ajuka Beelzebub is his direct relative, and anything I do can be tracked. I can at least get something to use against him. Time to play this cool. Romonus got off his wall and walked over to Diodora, who was with his father and mother. Lord Astaroth turned to him and gave him a polite nod of the head. "Romonus, happy birthday." Romonus smiled at the relative of Ajuka. "Lord Astaroth, I hope you and your wife have a fun time. I bet it is dull to be at a birthday party." Lord Astaroth shook his head. "Not at all. We are glad to be here." Romonus brought up his point. "If you don't mind, I would like to speak to Diodora, if you don't mind." Diodora kept his smile as he quickly agreed. "Of course. Speaking with the next Gremory heir would be an excellent use of my time." Lord Astaroth smiled as he watched his son walk off with Romonus. He only needed a hair of Diodora to use, as his teacher Mather had taught him many types of magic. Most of them were lethal, but he would need the aid of his teacher for this. As the both of them stopped, Romonus turned to Diodora. "So you like nuns?" Diodora's eyes shot open. "What? You like nuns? Your peerage consists of them, doesn't it?" "I know what you do." With squinted eyes, the young devil dismissed the fact. "No, you must be mistaken. Is that so? Because I could swear that every single one of your peerage consists of excommunicated nuns and maidens. What would the church think? Are you threatening me?" "No, you have good taste. I just wanted to say that you should be more careful, as the church might get wind of your plans. If that happened, the angels might get mad. So keep that in mind." "I will, if you will excuse me." As Diodora walked back to his parents, Romonus, with some telekinesis, ripped a hair from his head. Diodora barely noticed, as he felt it was just an itch. Once he was back with his parents, he made up a lie about what they talked about. As for Romonus, his face did not change as he walked back to his wall. He stored Diodora's hair away, which he would use in a ritual to claim Diodora's heart. The ritual he wanted to use required the heart of a magical creature and a few other materials. The ritual was spoken in off by McGregor, and how, if used properly, would purify a magician energy. In his case, he hoped to use the demonic energy held by a pure-blooded devil to increase the purity of his own. Plus, Mathers had already used it before, and he said it had no downsides. Of course, he could not rush anything, as a Ajuka was a nightmare. He would need Max Gregor's help for his plan to work. For now, he began to look around, as there were several hundred people there. Besides Serzex, the other Satans had also arrived. Falbium Asmodeus was straight up asleep in a corner. Seraphal was making a ruckus off in earshot, while Ajuka was keeping to himself. But with a glance, he was able to spot Riser, who was around 15 years old. All things considered, Riser was not all that bad compared to Diodora. Sure, the dude was a horn dog, but was that so wrong? He was a noble devil, so of course he wanted hot girls for his harem. And he had them from what the anime showed. The only thing he was doing wrong was gunning for Rias. Romonus took a deep breath, as had other people to speak to. For one, he made his way to his uncle Lord Bale. When his uncle spotted him, a rare smile appeared on the man's face. "Nephew, so good to see you." With a polite bow, Romonus returned the gesture. "The same could be said about you, uncle. You seem to be in good health. A shame grandfather could not be here. My father was quite busy, but he did tell me to bring you a birthday gift from our treasury." Romonus had not expected that. Grandfather did. Lord Bale nodded as pulled something out of his spatial ring. When Romonus saw what he had in hand, his eyes almost fell out of their sockets how shocked he was. A demon's sword. Lord Bale grinned when he saw the look of reverence on Romonus' face. Exactly. My father spoke to our ancestor Zekrom Bale, who had this blade stored away in our treasury. It was forged during the Great War, and it has tasted much angel blood during that time. Its name is Blood Drinker, named as such because it was forged from the soul and body of a vampire noble who wronged the Bale clan. Now it is time for this sword to have a new wielder. Despite being born of the Gremory, you exemplify all a Bale should be. Make us proud, my boy. I will, uncle. I shall not forget this. Image here. He held both hands out as Lord Bale placed the sword in his hands. Once he had it in hand, he pulled out the sword from the sheath and could swear the face crafted below the handle was screaming in pain. He could feel the demonic energy bubbling away in the sword hungering for blood. You shall get your due. He placed the sword in his spatial ring as well. He had to be careful. Overusing a demon's sword could kill you. As he was thinking this, Venelana saw him speaking with her brother. She had seen what Romonus had been gifted to. She rushed over. Brother, why did you give him a demon's sword? It's his birthday gift. Our father spoke to the ancestor who agreed to pass it on Romonus. He has shown much talent in the art, and demon swords should be wielded by pure blood after all. But the danger, it could kill him. That is a risk, but Romonus knows what he is doing. He isn't a child anymore. Romonus nodded. I know the risks, but also the reward. I shall not be led astray. Venelana was still worried, but at that moment Zeoticus spoke up with a spell to boost his volume. Welcome all to the birthday of my children Romonus and Romonus Gremory. This will also be an announcement, as through the years I have received many marriage proposals for both my son and daughter. After a long discussion, I have found the best candidates both. Instantly all attention was drawn to Zeoticus, who was about to announce the agreed-upon marriage proposals. Romonus had not expected to be included in such a thing, but depending on who it was, he would agree or fight it to his last breath. Which one it was would have to be seen. Before announcing it, Zeoticus wanted his children at his side. He turned to Rias and Romonus to call them forward. Romonus, Rias, come up. Romonus took a deep breath as he walked toward his father, while Rias did the same. If this had been before Romonus talked with her, she would have caused a scene, but she was not scared. She had time to get ready to break her engagement. She looked toward Romonus, who looked in her direction with a smile. It was a smile that said 1,000 words, so she did not panic. It was time for her to take charge of her fate, all because of her brother's encouraging words. When both of them were with their father, they instantly became the center of the room. With a glance, Romonus could see several lords who had their daughters, nieces, granddaughters, or even younger siblings whom they had suggested to Zeoticus. Marriage in Devil Society was all about forging connections and alliances. Whoever was accepted would be tied to the Gremory clan, which held the rank of Duke, high up in the rankings of the remaining clans. It has been 11 years since the blessing that was the birth of my twins, Rias and Romonus Gremory. During that time, I have received many requests from many of the pillars to tie our clans together. Now, my wife and I have come to a decision. Thanks to Lord Beelzebub and my son Lord Lucifer's recommendation, it has been decided that the Astaroth and Gremory households shall be linked in blood. It is my pleasure to announce the engagement of Latia, Astaroth, and my son. Surzek smiled as he gave a thumbs up to Ajuka. The green-haired man returned the gesture as he allowed a rare smile to appear on his face. Both of them were great friends, brothers even, and now they would be tied together. Instantly, a wave of applause was formed as Romonus and Latia looked at each other. Latia was from a branch family born of the union of the Astaroth and Ajira's clans. Romonus smiled in her direction, placed a hand over his heart, and gave a light bow. She returned the gesture with a curtsy by holding the sides of her crimson dress. Romonus was for sure not going to fight the engagement, as she was a wonderful person. She would make a wonderful bride, and he would try to be the best husband he could. Thankfully, he would still be allowed to have his harem, as noble devils always did. Though legally, Latia would be his legal wife, which he had no complaints about. Once the applause settled down, a little Zeoticus turned to Rias. Now, my daughter Rias has had many suitors, all of which would link our clans together as well. It has been decided that my daughter Romonus Gremory shall be engaged to Riser Phoenix. May they both have happy marriages. Riser grinned as he winked in Rias' direction. However, she snorted and looked away. She did it openly, which made Riser snarl in displeasure. People started to look in his direction as Rias seemed heavily uninterested in him. Zeoticus cleared his throat as he tried to clear the air. Enjoy the rest of the celebration. Rias, Romonus, take this time to get to know your future spouses. Rias and Romonus bowed to their father, but as they began to walk, Romonus bent down to speak to Rias. Don't let him touch you. Don't let him rile you up. And keep deflecting. You have 7 years. I will make sure he can never lay a finger on you. All you have to do is trust me. Do you? Rias nodded with a determined look on her face. I trust you. From there, they both split up as Romonus walked to Latia. At the moment, she was the same age as him, but he was taller than she was by a few inches. When he reached her, he bowed once again. Lady Astaroth, I am Romonus. I wish to spend the rest of the evening by your side. Latia extended a hand to him, as do I, Lord Gremory, but if we are to be engaged, let's not refer to each other by honorifics. You can call me Latia, and I shall call you Romonus. He smiled as he took her hand, which was extremely soft. As he did so, he looked at her nails, which were painted a light blue, and even the tips of her blonde hair were dyed blue as well. He smiled as he planted a polite kiss on the back of her hand. If that is what you want. Before we go any further, I wanted to ask what you feel about this engagement. It is expected for nobles such as us to be married off, and you seem to have the power to fight your engagement. Quite easily, may I add. Latia was no slouch, as Ajuka himself had been mentoring her, as she was his niece since she was a small girl. As a result, her strength was many times higher than would be expected of her age. It exceeded many of the older nobles who never trained at that too. Not yet the ultimate class like him, though. She smiled when she heard his words. I see you are perceptive. He smiled back. I was mentored by the best knight, rook, and bishop of the underworld. And you were mentored by Ajuka Beelzebub, so we are even. Latia explained why she was not fighting her engagement. I'm not a fool, Romonus. I have heard many rumors about you, and for the past few years, my uncle began to bring up the idea of a marriage between us. He never forced the issue, but your brother Surzex and my uncle have been talking about being family for years. If my uncle was married and had a daughter, he would engage them to Millicass. But he is uninterested in such a thing, so his niece was chosen. Does that displease you? Romonus shook his head. I was planning on fighting my engagement with all my heart if it had been someone else. As you know, devils are not commonly known to train themselves, and I have been training since I was 3. I have earned my power, and I did not wish to be engaged to a spoiled, noble brat who relied on her status for everything. I think that is the exact reason we were chosen for each other, as you seem to have the same desire. I do. For many years my uncle has mentored me, so I desired a groom to at least match my drive. And I have found them, it seems. I am pleased to have passed your scrutiny. The dance will begin soon. Will you be joining me? She smiled as she stood next to him and held his arm. I shall. Until then, I have a simple question. What is your hobby? Because of my mentor McGregor Mathers, I have cultivated an interest in experimenting with new magic types, and I have recently begun to learn alchemy. It is my wish to one day be able to never before see elixirs, but it is still just a hobby. That sounds interesting. Maybe I can help you with your studies. As for me, because of my mixed heritage, I am close to my relative Seek Vera Agars. Because of her, I have an interest in sci-fi. Anime. That seemed to have made her perk up a lot. You know of anime? He nodded. Of course. I am quite a fan of anime myself. I have developed a few spells from anime I have seen in the past. Do you have any mecha anime recommendations? I certainly do. I'm quite glad you enjoy anime like I do. While Romonus and his new fiancée Latia got to know each other, Rias was with Riser. She had her arms crossed as she looked at the 15-year-old blonde. Romonus Gremory, word of you is most certainly spread. Your beauty shall only rise with age, as I am sure to see once we are wed. Don't count on it. Riser's eye twitched. Huh? Don't count on what? Me marrying you. I have made up my mind to challenge our marriage. A good day to you. With that, she walked off, leaving Riser slack-jawed. His father, Lord Phoenix, barely held back a chuckle. His wife elbowed him in the side, as Riser was already starting to get mad. How dare she? His older brother, Ruvel, broke the silence. I'm happy for her. Being married to you would suck. Ruvel. His mother tried to chastise him, but he did not relent. Am I wrong, though? Riser is not known for his respectful attitude, and neither Surzex nor Romonus approve of him. Just look. Riser looked in Surzek's direction, who smiled in his direction with a kind but teasing look. He then looked over at Romonus, who turned to him with a smirk. Seeing not just the Devil King, but the next Gremory heir disapprove, left him pissed. When is the marriage? Lord Phoenix answered. When Rias reaches the age of 18. Riser grit his teeth and clenches his hands tightly. They're giving her time to break it off? Do they know who I am? Rivel nodded. Which is why they're doing this. They know exactly who you are. Now suck it up. As he had his crisis, Rias, with a smile on her face, walked over to her mother's side. Venelana reached down and held her hand, as she was happy her daughter had a chance to choose for herself. She had time to grow stronger, master herself, and had a chance to choose for herself. She thought back to her childhood, as she was the daughter of Demonidas Baal's mistress. Despite inheriting the clan power of destruction and being the strongest woman ever born of Clan Baal, she was still not able to become the next heir. With her power, she could have fought her engagement at any time, but when she learned she would be marrying Zeoticus, she did not. The Gremory clan were all kind, lovable people, and very quickly she had fallen in love with her husband. She had been lucky, but Rias did not have that luck with Riser. So she would have to fight for it. How are you feeling, Rias? I was scared before, but not anymore. Romonus promised to help me. Did he? Are you even going to be able to endure the training regiment? Rias blushed, as it was true, she had quite the last time. Let's not talk about last time. New time, new me. Venelana smiled as she looked at Romonus chatting away with Latia. From the smiles, laughs, and good interaction they were having, she was truly happy for the both of them. I wish them a happy marriage. Meanwhile, Surzex and Ajuka were both watching their relatives in the distance. Surzex patted Ajuka on the shoulder. I am sure Romonus will make her happy. He better. She is the closest thing I have to a child of my own. Serafal chimed in with the most obvious. Then get married, Ajuka-kun. Ajuka denied that. I am good. Falbium opened his eyes as he had been sleepwalking. Marriage means no more naps, so I don't blame you. Ajuka agreed with some of what Falbium said. That, and I don't have the time. I have other things to do. My duties as Beelzebub and my hobbies take priority. A wife would take that from me. Serafal had to agree. True, we are busy as it is, and being married would steal the little freedom I have. Surzek smiled. How about Romonus? Serafal laughed and waved him off. He is like a little brother to me. Besides, Rias and Sona are close friends. Me getting involved with him would just be weird. Surzek shrugged. Just saying. The four of us are all reaching our 6th century in a few more decades. It would be nice to not be the only married Satan. Ajuka, Serafal, and Falbium all looked at each other before they all laughed. Ajuka patted Surzex on the shoulder with pity. Just seeing you married is enough to make me appreciate being single. You be the outlier for us. Serafal giggled as she gave him a thumbs up. Agreed. Good luck with that. Falbium closed his eyes and fell back asleep. Surzex frowned as he looked at Romonus and communicated telepathically. Yo, Romonus, I got a mission for you. Romonus turned to his brother. What is it? Marry Serafal. Huh, you heard me. Add her to your harem or whatever. Do it for your brother. Romonus got serious and gave his brother a thumbs up. Surzex returned the gesture with a smirk on his face. Graphia, who was watching the whole interaction, sighed, as her husband was up to no good again. Either way, Romonus was fine with getting closer to Serafal. She was a hottie and fun to be around. Chaotic girls were fun, and since she was forever single, she was a virgin. All the better. After Surzex essentially told him to seduce his friend, Romonus was in no way opposed. Seraphol was a fan favorite of his because not only was she a goofball, she had the power to back it up. He had 3 criteria for the ladies that would form his harem one day. Of course, beauty was the first, second was drive to improve, third of all was fun, and the chaotic fourth option was to cause as much of a shitstorm to fate as possible. Seraphol was single in the series and was only friendly to Issei. As for the fate of Issei himself, Romonus could simply murder him to take the boosted gear or handle him some other way. Issei was the main character of DxD, so killing would not be easy. Plot armor would activate or something of that nature. Instead, he planned to allow Rainier to nearly kill him and then come in at the final moment to deal the final blow. It was easily achievable, as he could already end a large city at maximum power. Of course, Kuo was important, but he would not spend his time in the town. He was brought out of his thoughts when Latia spoke to him. I wanted to ask you this, but I saw you talking with Diodora earlier. What did you say to him? Since he is the heir of the Astaroth family, I felt it prudent to get along with him since he is related to Ajuka, my brother's best friend. I suggested that we bring our clans closer. Turns out, it was unneeded, as that is why we are being engaged. Latia understood, as that was a perfect reason to talk to him. Were you uninformed of this decision? I was uninformed. I had assumed my father would engage Rias, but not me. Turns out he decided to go ahead with it, and it seems that we both won out in the end. Latia hugged his arm a bit tighter, as since she was a child, she had been told it was her duty to marry a fellow noble. Her uncle had told her that the best way for her to take ownership of her fate was to grow strong enough to be able to accept or deny it. In her case, Romonus just happened to be what she was looking for. We should speak to my uncle before he goes off into his lab. We won't be wed until we are both 18, which leaves us 7 years to nurture a relationship. Sada will have to be long distance. Does it have to be? I can visit you as often as you desire and vice versa. I would like that, but we both are going to be busy in our time. Puberty is when we devils undergo the most growth, so my time will be spent in training. My uncle even has thought of passing along his method to me. Romonus understood her. I get it. I will also begin to train not just under my brother's peerage, but under him as well. Now let's talk to them. I want to get a reaction out of Beelzebub. As they both began to walk toward the Satans, Latia turned to him. That will be hard. He rarely, if ever, smiles and keeps to himself. Only because I'm the daughter of his brother did he ever give me that much attention. I have heard that about him. A shame that one of the super devils of our race has no interest in the opposite gender. Very true. When they finally reached the Satans, the 4 of them turned toward them. Surzex placed a hand on Romonus' shoulder. Congratulations, Romonus. I feel happy for you. Romonus genuinely smiled this time. Thank you, brother. You all should have informed me beforehand. Anyway, I wanted to talk to my uncle-in-law. Can I call you uncle? Ajuka nodded. Call me whatever you want. I wanted to inform you that you will be receiving your evil pieces in a month. After that, you'll be free to begin to explore the human world all you want. Romonus had several locations in the world where he could find good candidates for his peerage. Thank you. I was getting cooped up being in the underworld because of the politics. It might be fun. Seraphol began to laugh after hearing his words. In that case, are you sure you want to become the next Lucifer? It's full of paperwork and boring meetings. Can't I just use a computer to do all that for me? Don't tell me you actually do paperwork by hand. Instantly, Seraphol and Surzex looked at each other. They had not thought about it before, which made Falbium shake his head. Why do you think I have so much time to sleep? My computer does most of my work for me. Ajuka shrugged. Same. Seeing how he had just dropped a bomb on his brother and Seraphol, Ramona's side. Honestly, brother, I thought you would know that. Surzex waved him off. I'm almost 600 years old. Lay off already. Seraphol pointed at herself. Do I look like someone good with technology? Romonus looked down to look at her, as she was short. He started to hold back a laugh, as she was only 5 feet 2 inches. He was 11 and was already taller than she was. When she noticed, she frowned. You are making fun of me, aren't you? No, not at all. I don't believe you. Latia began to chuckle as her uncle and his friends were just a bunch of goofballs with enough power to rule their society. They were just good people who had no interest in world domination or something as dumb. Ajuka turned to Romonus with a smile. Make my niece happy. Romonus decided to try to play his family card here. Then can you teach me the Cancera formula? Ajuka did not straight up say no as he expected. How good are you at math? Romonus in his past life was a straight A student, but math was such a hard subject. Above average. Ajuka pondered on it. I will be teaching Latia here, so if you come along I can test to see how compatible you are with it. Consider it a gift for joining our families as one. Thank you. I will not forget to return the favor. Ajuka smiled and ruffled his hair. Just keep being the same and don't go wanting world domination. Romonus had no interest in that. Ruling the world is dumb. I'd much rather spend the time on my hobby. Just as Ajuka was going to ask what it was, Zeoticus spoke once more. Now that my children have had the chance to speak to their future spouses, I think it is time to wrap up this celebration with a dance. Romonus turned to Latia, as it was a good chance to show off his dance skills. He had been taught dancing by his mother, and he had taken a fancy to it thanks aiding his footwork. Would you honor me with a dance? Of course. They were not the only young couple, as many nobles had been engaged much younger than them, and already either close to their finances or growing closer to them. Some adults decided to dance like Lord Citry and his wife Lady Citry, but Lord Bale did not. His uncle was a cold and reserved man, so his wife instead stood by his side in silence. Regardless, he ignored all other distractions and instead focused on Latia. Are you familiar with tango? Of course. Romonus wrapped a hand around her waist while she placed her hands in his. From there, they both got rid of all distractions and began the dance of tango. This was the first time they had met, and a dance like this was a very intimate moment. The both of them started slow, but quickly they began to find their rhythm. Latia and Romonus quickly started to become the center of the room as their dance began to pick up pace. Latia's mother openly wept at her daughter's dance, while her father looked over to Ajuka with a smile. Ajuka looked back at his brother and smiled back. They had done the right thing and found the perfect partners for Latia and Romonus. Just as no one expected their dance to become even better, their pace seemingly doubled. They began to move through the dance floor in a flurry of footsteps and dance moves. Rias, who was still with her mother, covered her mouth as she got a little teary-eyed. So beautiful. Venelana smiled as he hugged her daughter tight. Just then Zeoticus walked up to her and extended his hand. Love of my life, dance with me. Zeoticus, it's been so long. I still remember the way you dazzled when we met. Rias pushed her mother to go with her father, as this was why she wanted to find who she loved. Venelana had told her how her father stole her heart, and she wanted to see it. With that push, Venelana took her husband's hand and joined him on the dance floor once again. Surzex then turned to Graphia, who was still holding Millicass. Graphia, my dear. She smiled as she handed Millicass to Seraphal. Hold him. Sure. Once they were dancing, 3 pairs of Gremory were locked in their dances. Rias was sad she had no one, but she would rather die than dance with Riser. She looked as Latia leapt into the air and Romonus carried her with grace. They continued their lightning pace, but to devils like them, it was a regular place. When the dance finally ended, they both looked each other in the eyes. That simple gesture meant too much to them. When every dance ended, Zeoticus turned to address the guests. Thank you for coming, everyone. Let's all wish the new matchings prosperity. Following his statement, a cacophony of applause filled the ballroom. Romonus and Latia gently rested their head against each other as they enjoyed the other's company. This was the first time they had met, and it had gone great. The celebration ended up lasting a few more hours and ended when all of the food and drink were done. Once the guests began to leave, Romonus and Latia exchanged contact information as phones were a thing in the underworld. Riser tried to do the same, but Rias shot him down and refused to even talk to him. That angered the Phoenix heir, but his brother Ruvel pulled him along with the rest of the family. But once the mansion was truly empty, Romonus walked toward Rias. Tomorrow at 7 a.m. Wake up on time, okay? Rias nodded. I won't slack off anymore. Count on it. I do. With that goodbye, Romonus returned to his room and opened it with his key. Once he was inside, he brought out the hair of Diodora. As he looked at the blue hair of one of the shittiest characters, he thought about it. I better call my teacher. He will hear me out. McGregor Mathers was not a noble individual and was open to anything in exchange for magical research. He had learned many black magic spells from his teacher, and this was one of his creations. He called it the Call of the Harvesta, and if it worked, the heart of Diodora would be in his hands. Of course, if it went wrong, he could end up with his heart out of his chest, so caution was advised. That was why he had to be cautious, as rushing into rituals was dangerous. For now, he pulled out his phone and called up his teacher. The phone did not ring for long before it was picked up. Romonus, what do you need? Master, I wanted your aid in a less than noble experiment. Explain. Of course. I made a spell of my own, as I want to use the ritual of purification. I have picked out a heart, but its owner still has it. Who is it? Diodora Astaroth. 4. It's a long story. I have time. He sighed. Fine. What do you know about the future? Not as much as I should. Can you see the future? Maybe. Stay in your room. I will be there, and you better convince me of this yourself. Got it. Yes. Romonus backed away as the teleport circle of his magic teacher opened up. From it emerged McGregor Mathers, the best bishop of the underworld. Explain to me what you know. All right then. Buckle up. Samuel Liddell McGregor Mathers, one of the greatest human mages to have ever been born even before becoming a devil. It took Surzek's both of his bishop pieces to reincarnate Mathers. When he was human, he founded the magician organization, the Golden Dawn, which he was still in contact with. The man had lived for more than 150 years and had become even stronger throughout that time, when time held no meaning for him as a devil. He wore a crimson robe with a distinguished design, and a permanent aura of magical suppression radiated from him. With a wave of his hand, Romonus' room was covered in multiple wards, so no one would hear their conversation. All right, Romonus, explain why you want to kill Diodora. Even if you don't convince me, your secret will be safe. Romonus sat down in his favorite chair as he explained. Master, it goes like this. I can't see the future. I receive glimpses of prophecy in my dreams. I have no control over them, but from what I have seen, they can be changed. McGregor pondered on what he had been told. Interesting. Got some examples? Ramana nodded. Yes. Rias was involved in many events I keep picturing, which all take place 7 years from now. I already knew of her engagement to Riser, but oddly enough, the version of events I keep seeing don't involve me. Like I don't exist. If I did not exist, Rias would continue to waste her time and end up having to challenge Riser to a rating game, which she would be expected to lose. But my existence caused this to change. McGregor's closed his eyes as he pondered on the words he heard. Very curious. So, in these visions, you don't exist. McGregor extended his hand out, and a grimoire appeared in his hands. He flipped through it at incredible speeds before he put it away. I get what you mean. So, Diodora causes trouble in the future. Yes, Diodora betrays Devil Society by joining a group called the Chaos Brigade, led by Rizavim. Rizavim will manipulate Ophis, the dragon god of infinity. As you know, she is rather simple. Shalba Beelzebub, Cruisery Asmodeus, and Kateria Leviathan will all join this group. McGregor sighed. And you didn't think it smart to say so beforehand? We can prevent this by leading an assault beforehand. Romonus shook his head. I plan to take the hearts of Shalba, Cruisery, and Kateria, and if we move beforehand, I will miss my chance. I want at least 5 more years of training before I was going to bring this up. I only told you because I know you all, Master. McGregor began to laugh. You greedy little guy. You want the bloodlines of the original Satans. This sounds fun and chaotic, but chaos is fun and so much can be learned. Your secret is safe with me. Let's kill, is Diodora. Show me your spell. Romonus smiled as he pulled out a journal from his spatial ring and flipped it open to the page of the spell. He handed the journal over to his mentor, who began to flip through the spell. Damn, you want to call on the harvest of all things wicked. As for the spell itself, it is a mix of voodoo, black magic, white magic, summoning magic, Norse, fairy, and demonic magic. You have done a good job with this, but let me just do this. You do not want to get caught by a juka, but the harvesta is unique. Creepy fellow. From thin air, McGregor brought out a pen and began to change up the ritual lines, added some of his expertise, and added in ways to hide who cast the spell. It took him all of a minute to be finished with the edits. Here you are. Now, you'll be much safer and harder to track. Consider it a gift. When Romonus saw the improved ritual, he smiled. Will I ever compare to you, master? McGregor laughed as he ruffled Romonus' hair. If you give up the path of the knight and rook and focus exclusively on magic, of course. If you decide to keep on the current path you have of focusing on all three, then no. Romonus did not believe that. I have thousands of years, master. I will become the first devil to ascend to godhood, as even my brother has not achieved that. How can I allow myself to follow a single path when three are laid out in front of me? McGregor stared at Romonus for a few moments before he broke out laughing. He keeled over and held his stomach as he continued to laugh. Ha 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 ha. You certainly have a goal, kid. Fuck it, come on. Let's do some dark magic and get you a heart. Fresh, of course. Romonus got up and looked over the ritual circle that his teacher edited for him. Once he memorized it, he pulled out his sword from his spatial ring. It was not his demon sword, but the one he had forged years ago, as he did not want to use it yet. He pulled the sword from its sheath and cut open his wrist. McGregor simply watched as he turned his wrist over and began to spill his blood onto the ground. Romonus focused on his demonic energy as the blood spilling on the ground began to move into lines, symbols, and shapes of multiple magic systems. His teacher observed his work as he checked for mistakes. But Romonus had been learning under the mage for 6 years. He would not make a mistake like that, as he knew the risks associated with magic. When he was finished, he felt he had lost over half of his blood, but in the ground, a large 6-foot by 6-foot blood ritual circle had been formed. It was the most intricate thing he had formed, and he was already feeling lightheaded. He staggered over to his alchemy table and grabbed a red potion, which he chugged down. McGregor did not offer him any hold, and just watched as Romonus closed his eyes and began to circulate his demonic energy in his body. In a few moments, his pale face recovered its color, and his lightheadedness went away. When he opened his eyes, they were glowing bright purple as his potion flowed through his system. What was that? A blood potion, made for speeding up the recovery of blood. I made it from blood shrooms, grasping devil vine flowers, and crimson moss. Does it have any downsides? He nodded. Drinking it when you don't need it will make you die of polycythemia vera. Blood thickening, but when needed it can be a lifesaver. Romonus kneeled, opened up the cabinet on which his alchemy table was, and pulled out a green potion, which he drank. He once again focused on the potion and used the healing herbs to heal himself. Once he was done, he continued to circulate his demonic energy to make sure nothing was wrong. This whole thing took him about 10 minutes, but his teacher did not rush him. When he felt he was ready, he stood up and walked over to the magic circle. All right, what do you have to mark Diodora as the target? Romonus pulled out the blue hair he had taken from Diodora and showed it to his teacher. McGregor nodded, as that would work excellently. We can begin. Give me a few moments. McGregor from his spatial ring pulled out 9 stones of pure, refined souls. He placed them in each circle in the 9 corners. In the center, they placed Diodora's hair. He turned to Romonus with a serious expression. You do it. This is your spell. I just fixed it for you. Latin will work just fine. Just remember, the harvester can reject your offer, so be careful. Romonus nodded as he placed his sword back in its sheath before he kneeled in front of the magic circle. He placed a hand in front of it before he began to send his demonic energy into the circle. He took a deep breath as he began to chant, and the circle began to glow a bloody red as he began to chant in Latin. Invoco maledictionem harvestri, ut precium sanguinis salvo, harvestrum voco pro cruento commercio, ut invoco cruentum opus, metet cruentum premium pro reperborum cor. I call upon the harvester's curse. As I pay the price of blood, I call on the harvester for a bloody exchange. As I call on his bloody work, he shall reap his bloody reward for the heart of the damned. He repeated the chant 9 times, and each time each soul stone burst apart and flowed into the center surrounding the hair that belonged to Diodora. McGregor opened his journal and began to note down what he needed to improve but nothing would go wrong with him here. With each repetition, the more demonic energy he was losing, but when he finished the 9th chant, a huge amount of soul and demonic energy surged around the blue hair. Romonus backed away as the mana and demonic energy began to rise into the air as they consolidated into a figure. A gaunt, hooded figure formed in the magic circle. The Harvesta was a magical entity formed and summoned from the spirit realm, but some believed him to be the Grim Reaper. Romonus did not know if that was true or false, but McGregor knew more. He just wouldn't tell him. Image here. The Harvesta looked down at Romonus, who kneeled with an extended open palm. The figure stared at Romonus for a few moments before he nodded, turned around, and vanished. McGregor grinned. He accepted. Romonus stood up and looked over to his teacher. You mean to tell me he could refuse? McGregor nodded. Yes. He is whimsical, and it seems he took a liking to you. I once called on him, and he rejected me. I wonder why he listened to you. Romonus was now slightly worried. He won't take years off my life, will he? No. Equivalent exchange. Those 9 souls were the price we paid, and it was enough to manifest him for a time. He will get you your heart. We just have to wait for him to finish. I wouldn't wish the Harvesta on my worst enemy. Oh wait, I tried. Ha ha ha. Romonus sat down in his chair and waited for the Harvesta to do his bloody work. Diodora was currently quite pissed after what Romonus told him. He had worked hard to keep his fetish secret, as if his family found out what he was doing they would punish him. If the church or heaven found out, they would hunt him down and start another war. Currently, he was venting his rage on his queen. He was in no way being gentle as the former holy maiden was forced onto the bed with a pained look on her face. Fucking bastard. Who does he think he is? A master, P-. Shut up. Diodora reached down and wrapped his arms around her throat. Who told you to talk? You don't talk. This mouth is to suck me off and nothing more. Got that? She did not say anything as her eyes began to roll back into her skull. But as Diodora was about to finish inside her, he felt a cold chill. What? His luxurious room went from his private abode to a cold, terrifying place. He got off his queen as he waved his hand to form clothes around himself. What is happening? He turned to his peerage, which he had been abusing since he got back. You, wake up. Protect me. Sadly, they were out, as he had knocked them out from the abuse. Just as Diodora raised his arm to punish them, he suddenly felt something new. He looked at where his hand would be and instead found a stump. A quickly rotting stump, which made him panic. Ah! My hand! He fell to the ground as he rolled around in pain. When he looked up, he noticed the Harvesta looking down on him. In his hands, he held a black scythe at the end of a chain, and on the floor was his rotting hand. You bastard! Diodora raised his remaining hand and formed a magic circle from which he was going to attack, but the Harvesta swung again and cleaved his remaining hand. Ah! My hands! No! Stay away! He backed away before raising his rotting arms and forming a massive green barrier as he called upon his barrier magic. He began to madly laugh as he continued to bleed rotting blood. Even a ultimate class devil will take time to break through this. I am Diodora, related to the great Beelzebub. You will die. Unimpressed, the Harvesta floated toward the barrier before he lightly tapped it with a bony finger. Instantly, the green barrier collapsed under the surge of necrotic energy. What? The Harvesta floated toward him and leaned in close. When Diodora looked in the hood, he saw his own rotting face. He gasped as a dark bony hand was shoved into his chest. He reached up with his stumps to grab the Harvester's arm, but he was undisturbed. Taking a sick joy in this, he slowly pulled out the still-beating heart of Diodora. Unlike everything else, the organ did not rot in his hold. The Harvesta looked at the heart in his hand before he burst into darkness. When his peerage would wake up, they would only find a pile of ash confirmed to be Diodora. In the morning, the whole Astaroth clan would be shocked at the death of their heir. Ajuka would be informed, who would begin to search for answers. Ending Diodora early had a great domino effect on fate, which Romonus Boss reveled in. Romonus kept his word to cause as much of a mess as he could, and he was delivering. As Romonus and McGregor waited, the mage began to go into another lecture on what Romonus needed to improve. He felt that his control over his demonic energy was excellent, and he had Latin down. While his race allowed him to translate any language into English, it did not remove his ability to learn other languages. McGregor nodded, as his student had been doing excellently since he began to teach him. You are an excellent student of the art of magic. Even if you were human, I am sure you would have gotten the art down. Romonus brought up what he had wanted for a while now. I have been wanting to ask my brother to train me personally. Will he do it? McGregor sat down in a chair he conjured out of magic. Despite how busy he is, he will take time to train you. Unlike you, he was just born extreme outlier. Who knows why, but he truly thinks that you will become the next super devil based on talent alone. I mean, you are 11 years old, and you are in the ultimate class already. If I am not wrong, the ritual you're going to undergo will push you even further into it. You have been learning under us, so that is the result, and you are talented as well. Romonus smiled, as he truly had 3 legendary beings as his teachers. At that moment, in a puff of darkness, the harvester returned. Romonus and McGregor turned toward the cloaked being who floated toward Romonus. He held out the bloody, still beating heart to Romonus, who held out a palm. The harvester placed the heart into his hand, but instead of leaving, he floated around Romonus a few times. McGregor was confused as it should return to the spirit realm. Romonus was confused as from what his teacher told him, the harvester would only stay until his one request was complete. Do you need something? He stopped spinning around Romonus before he patted his head with a bony hand on Romonus' head 3 times. With that, he burst into smoke and vanished. Romonus placed a hand on his head, wondering what that was about. Master, he took a liking to you. If you call him again, I am sure he will answer. I will tell you more about the spirit realm when I get a chance. Romonus nodded as he took a look at the heart in his hands. McGregor walked toward him and took the heart from him. Several analytical spells moved around the heart for a few moments before McGregor nodded. Perfect. Diodora may have been a slimy prick, but he was still a pure-blooded noble. Just at this young age, he had quite a lot of demonic energy. Nowhere near you, but we are not adding his energy to your reserves. We're going to use it to refine and purify your own, which is already very pure because of your Gremory and Bale lineages. This is going to be good. When can we begin? Do I need to recover or something? McGregor thought about it before he sat back down in his chair. Take 30 minutes and hear. He tossed Romonus a magic stone, which Romonus began to absorb. Demonic energy and mana were almost the same thing, with demonic energy being mana in an altered state to suit devils. It was why, with a quick conversion, he could use mana like this to recover his reserves quickly. McGregor, in the meantime, walked over to the now burnt ritual circle on the floor. He waved his hand, and any trace of the ritual was destroyed, and the wood floor was back into a pristine state. He kneeled down, and unlike Romonus, he kept blood in standby. He pulled out a bottle of his own blood, which he poured onto the ground. Considering he constantly experimented with magic, and the user's blood worked best, he had plenty of it on standby. In a few moments, he had shaped the blood on the ground into another ritual circle. Along with it, he pulled out 10 magic stones of great purity. Soul stones were rarer, and he was only allowed to make them out of criminals, so he had less than he would like. Though for a mage like him, he could make these stones with ease, as he had his study where effectively mass-produced these. He also placed the heart of Diodora along with the stones which were still beating. Everything Diodora had been transferred into the heart, his energy, his soul, his life force. All of it was trapped in the beating organ. With a smirk, McGregor stood up. Should have been stronger. The stone he gave to Romonus crumbled into dust as he had drained it of energy. He only took another 10 minutes to settle down his energy before he opened his eyes. I am ready. McGregor motioned for him to walk forward. Come on, stand in the circle and don't step on the ingredients. I will tell you that Ajuka will know the harvester was involved. Then again, moving against a thing like that will be tricky even for Beelzebub. Is there a risk of him finding us? McGregor smiled. We can only hope. Romonus stood in the middle of the circle, not so confident now. No chant. McGregor shook his head. Nah, this one is easy. I will activate it, you just focus on not exploding. Romonus closed his eyes and waited as McGregor activated the ritual circle. The blood ritual instantly took effect, and the heart of Diodora burst apart into a bloody red mist. The 5 stones along with it exploded one after the other into blue mist, which mixed with the demonic energy contained in Diodora's heart. The red and blue mist began to rise into the air before it entered Romonus' nostrils. He took a deep breath, and he made sure to breathe all of it in. When he did so, he instantly felt the mana and demonic energy mixture move throughout his body. Instantly, he began to feel the demonic energy of a noble devil begin to be used up to purify his energy. Devils innately were an artificial race created by Lucifer from Lilith's body, so they had limitations. Devils like Ajuka, Surzex, and Rizavim were what they could become once those limitations were removed. And then again, he planned to go beyond what his brother had been able to achieve, so everything was fair game. Romonus raised his hands and clasped them together as he kept all the energy he had absorbed into his body. McGregor was curious about what he was playing at, but inside Romonus' body, the energy contained in Diodora's heart and the 5 stones continued to increase the purity of his energy. As this process began, he started to circulate through his body. He felt how it surged through his bones, circulatory system, nerves, and magic circuits. Every being who used magic had them in their body, and he was no exception, but the surge of purer energy caused them to expand and grow. Romonus had always felt he had good circuits, but once his energy grew to this level, he knew there was always more to improve. The process lasted for an hour before all the energy he absorbed was used up. He took a few moments to stabilize his condition, but when he opened his eyes, his aura filled the room. Only the wards that McGregor had set up when he arrived kept everything contained. He grinned when he felt the aura of power that Romonus released. If there were levels in the ultimate class, I say you would be halfway to the middle of it. Though, your brother was born at this level, so it's whatever. Romonus snorted as he sat down in his chair. Yes, my brother is effectively a god among our race. He was born great, and he worked even harder to get where he is. Honestly, how lucky am I to be his brother? Seeing the proud look on his face made McGregor walk over and ruffle his hair. At least you're not jealous of his power. He snorted again. You think I will fall to something like petty jealousy? My brother is almost 600 years old. I am 11 years old. He fought near the end of the Great War and the Devil Civil War. He has had centuries and real combat experience. I take pride in being the brother of Surzex Lucifer. Don't forget it. McGregor smiled as he pulled out a grimoire from midair. Here, a gift from me. I wrote it, by the way. When Romonus looked at the title, he was shocked. Soul Arts? McGregor nodded. Souls are something barely understood, even by mages like me. That Gremory has everything I have learned in my 150 years on this earth. Make use of it, Romonus, and ask your brother to train you himself. You both were born with the Gremory and Bale traits, only that he was born as an anomaly. If it were not for him, you would be one of the greatest talents of this generation. All right, now that you're in the ultimate class, expect your training to match it. Suji and Cert will be quite happy to push you more. Romonus smiled as his teacher teleported away, leaving him alone. He looked down at the grimoire and placed a hand on the hard leather cover. Honestly, these old dudes just keep laying the gifts on me. He shook his head as he placed the book into his spatial ring. He was in no position to begin training in it, as he needed to focus on stabilizing his condition. He stood up and changed his clothes once again. It went from a fancy suit into some shorts and a tank top. All right. Before he forgot, he used his demonic energy to wash himself off and clean his teeth. As he lay in bed, he looked at the ceiling as he thought of his new life. Honestly, it's fun. He now had a fiancée, was an ultimate class being, and his family was amazing. Still, he had a goal he had to achieve, as only by being a devil god or demon god could he hope to match the DxD gods. Remembering the latest volumes of DxD, he shook his head as he focused on sleeping. He scoffed at the notion that Issei could defeat beings who could kill Great Red with 12 chosen heavenly breasts. It sounded so damn stupid, but this was DxD, where brains died after all. When he finally did fall asleep, he had expected to just sleep but instead he was back with Ravdal. When he saw the god of insanity, he smiled. "Boss, it's been 11 years. How's it going?" Ravdal smiled his creepy smile once again. "It's going wonderful. The fate of that world is starting to truly go out of control, and I am all for it. I just wanted to bring you here to inform you that if you keep up the good work, I just might throw in a bone or two for you." Romonus got the gist of it. "Rewards?" Ravdal nodded. "Yep. Good progress, by the way. You're going to need it." "That's ominous." Ravdal raised his hands. "Tends to happen when fate is broken. Good luck." When Romonus came to, he was back in his bed, as it was the morning now. "Okay, just as I expected. Breaking the fate of a world won't go without consequences. For starters, I need to work on this." Throughout the night, his energy reserves had been stabilizing themselves, and he only needed a little bit of effort to get them under control. He knew his teachers would put him through the gauntlet, and today Rias would begin training. He also had a new demon sword to master, or it would begin to steal his lifespan. "I got my work cut out for me, it seems. Oh well, I won't have it any other way." When Romonus woke up, he pulled out his phone, which was produced by a Juka. They were better than the most modern iPhones and could be charged with just a bit of demonic energy. When he checked the time, he smiled as it was 6:30 a.m. He still had 30 minutes before he had to present himself for training. If he was lucky, he would be able to see his brother, and if he was not too busy, he could ask him for some pointers. But then again, arriving on time is late. He waved his hand, causing his suit to fall into place on his body. When he was dressed, he pulled his boots into his hands. But before putting them on, he shined and cleaned them with a simple spell. He put them on and got up to leave his room. As usual, he locked his room before he created a teleport circle under his feet. In a burst of light, he appeared in front of Rias' room, as her room was quite far from his. Plus, rather than walk, it was better to just teleport. Once he appeared in front of her room, he opened the door and rushed in. "Rias, wake up! Wake up! Up and at him!" Rias, who had been having a pleasant dream, was awoken, suddenly causing her to jump. With groggy eyes, she fell out of bed on her face. "Ow!" He couldn't help but laugh at her, as she had not been woken up like that before. When Rias realized who it was, she rubbed her eyes as she tried to wake up. "Brother, what are you doing?" He walked toward her and grabbed her hand to pull her to her feet. She was barely awake, and her bed hair looked hilarious. Even her nightgown was all frizzy and cute, making him shake his head. She was still 11 after all. He patted her cute head, causing her hair to straighten out. "Training starts in half an hour. Of course, you can just refuse, but you know the consequences. Big Bad Riser will eat you. And by eat, I mean force you on his bed." Romonus stuck his tongue out and raised his hands over his head to freak her out. Her face instantly pulled back into fear as she shoved him back. "No, I won't quit. I will train. Don't let him take me." She looked quite spooked, so he smiled and reassured her. "I won't let him take you, Rias, but if Surzex and I do everything for you, what will you do in 500 years? You got to take charge of your own life at some point, right?" She thought about it before she nodded with a determined look on her face. "You right, brother. When do we start?" "Soon." He raised his hand and formed a magic circle above her head, which turned her nightgown into some proper workout clothes. Once she was dressed, he stood next to her and grabbed her hand. "Image here. Get ready. Just promise me you won't quit." "I won't." Rias barely remembered the last time she had tried to train along Romonus. She was about 7 if her memory served her correctly. He had dragged her along with him, and Suji, Surt, and McGregor all pushed her hard, which caused her to quit in an hour. At the time, being treated so harshly after living in luxury for her whole life was scary. Despite knowing they only had her best wishes in mind, her brother's knight, Rook, and Bishop could all be scary people. And Romonus had been training with them since he was 5 years old. Now, she would take charge of herself and not run anymore. Romonus opened a teleport circle under their feet and teleported them to the devil capital of Lilith. Their brother Surzex ruled over the city alongside his 3 goofball friends. More specifically, he teleported in front of his brother's castle, where he conducted his official Satan duties. Rias instantly began to look around and wonder, as it had been 4 years since she came with him. "We're back." Instantly, both Rias and Romonus were enveloped in pillar-like arms. Ha ha ha, the kids are back. Romonus instantly knew who it was, so he turned his neck to look at one of his teachers. Second, sir, good to see you. Surtur second was without question the strongest rook of the underworld. He was called the ultimate rook, and his name second was because the Norse gods tried to clone the original, making him the second. But when they couldn't control him and he went berserk, they abandoned him as he was too difficult to kill or lock up, until Surzex found him and helped him bring his power under control. Once he calmed down, he accepted Surzex's offer to join his peerage, and under a mutation rook piece, he was turned into a devil. Romonus and Rias as well. Today is a grand day. He hugged them even tighter, which made Rias gasp for air. She began to pat his arms to not be crushed, but Romonus tried to force his way out of the hug. Second, you're going to kill them. Oh, my bad. Second, let go of them, which made Rias gasp for air. Romonus took a few deep breaths to steady his breathing, as second was a fire giant with a mutation rook piece, making him monstrously strong. Once he got his breath, he turned to his sword teacher Tsuji Okita, the best knight of the underworld. In life, he had been the Shizengumi captain. Despite being a knight, he was skilled at magic rituals which he had tried to use to cure his tuberculosis, which was fatal at the time. In a last-ditch effort to survive, he summoned a devil, which just so happened to be Surzex, who saved him by turning him into a devil. It took both his brother's knight pieces, but it was worth it in the end. However, from the look of it, McGregor wasn't here. Romonus gave a polite bow, as these two men deserved the greatest respect. Hello again, master. Will Mathers not be here today? Tsuji shook his head as he sat on a rock. No, he said he will be busy with his studies, so he told us to spend more time training you. I heard your uncle gifted you a demon sword. I wonder how he knew you could wield demon swords. Romonus did wonder about that. Maybe he tested my talent beforehand, or he just assumed I would. Tsuji pondered on it before he shook his head. Regardless, you can wield them. On another note, I see you got stronger again. Expect your training to match it. Romonus was now feeling excited to learn higher stuff. I wouldn't have it any other way. Where do I begin? Surtur and Tsuji looked at each other before the knight pulled out a coin from his pocket. He flipped the coin and called the side he wanted. Heads. Second crossed his arms with a grin. Tails. When the coin fell into his hand, he flipped it onto the back of his hand. When they both looked at the coin, Second began to laugh as it landed on tails. Tsuji groaned as he tossed the coin to Surtur. All right then, guess I will be helping Rias. Don't worry, I won't make you swing a sword. Instead, I will have you use your power of destruction in more refined ways, along with being able to use it on the move. Ready? Rias nodded with a determined look on her face. Yes, sir. As for Surtur, he turned to Romonus before he tossed off his trench coat, revealing his muscular body. He was over 2 meters tall, with copper-toned skin and a body fitting of a Jotun. He jumped back the distance of a football field and raised his arms with open palms. Let's go. Romonus smiled, as with a wave of his hand, the upper part of his outfit fell off. He stored it in his ring to not leave it on the ground. Thanks to Surtur's training regiment, despite his age, he had cultivated an exceptional physique. It couldn't compare to his teacher, but it was a work in progress. Thanks to these brawls and the insane training he underwent under the Jotun, he was close. He could feel it was just a matter of time before he tapped into his two-key, or aura. He raised his hands in a fist and got ready for the beating he was sure to receive. Both he and Surtur did not move until the bell sounded off, which was Rias attacking Tsuji with a blast of destruction. Instantly, Surtur charged toward Romonus, who turned into a blur as he charged against his master. He pulled his arm back and smashed his fist against Surtur's liver, but he didn't even dent the muscle. Ha 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 ha! More power! Surtur spread his arms wide as Romonus began to throw a flurry of punches against the fire giant without effect. Damn it! It's Itadori versus Mojito. Each time he landed a punch, it did not sound like he was hitting flesh. It was like he was hitting pure metal, but Surtur kept his grin before he gazed down at him with burning eyes. Romonus couldn't even react before Surtur's giant palm smashed into his face, launching him into the distance. Surtur charged after him as Romonus flipped mid-air to land on the ground. His feet dug trenches in the ground as he charged towards Surtur. He jumped in the air as he tried to land an uppercut against the giant, but the mad Jotun used his chin to smash against his fist. The power Surtur held caused Romonus to be forced into a crater in the ground. Surtur snarled as he shoved his arm into the ground and pulled Romonus out like a carrot. Romonus was bruised, but he was not out. He spun around like a honey badger and twisted Surtur's wrist to get loose. He leapt off Surtur's arm and landed a massive kick to the head of Surtur, but he just used his head to lock Romonus' leg against his shoulder. Nice! With his free hand, he grabbed Romonus' face and leaped high into the air. Just when they reached a truly staggering height, he turned to Romonus, who now was feeling very afraid. He kept punching at Surtur's hand as it was covering his whole face. Good luck! He pulled back and tossed Romonus straight down like a meteor. Romonus screamed as he tried to fix his fall, but Surtur put so much force into his throw. Surzek sighed as he did his boring paperwork as a Satan. Grafia wouldn't let him slack off, and he was not even in his fancy chamber, but in this dingy office. Just as he was going to continue, he heard a familiar scream. He looked out the window and saw Romonus falling to the ground. He got up and looked out the window to see Surtur in the sky and Suji with Rias. His eyes lit up as he was about to join them in training his siblings, but he paused. Grafia was going to be here soon, and if she saw he was slacking, she would tie him to his chair until he was done. But his adorable siblings were right there. He could skip just one day, right? When he imagined his wife and her angry face, he smartly sat back down. Good luck, Romonus. As for Romonus, he did not use his wings as this was the training. Only hands and no energy. He only had a few moments before he hit the ground, which would hurt like hell. He stopped panicking and instead closed his eyes. He crossed his arms around his chest and stuck his legs together. He did not use his demonic energy or anything of the sort, but just before he hit the ground, a white aura began to form around his body. He had finally reached his life force, more commonly called Tuki. Surtur began to grin wildly as he saw that. He finally got it. Romonus opened his eyes the instant his feet touched the ground. He leapt back into the air with a double jump. Surtur snarled as he leapt down with his fist pulled back. Around his body, a fiery red Tuji formed as he too had his unlocked. Come on, show me your power, Romonus. Yes, sir. Romonus pulled his fist back and punched against Surtur's giant fist. When two Tuki users clashed, the one with the stronger life force would win. And no matter how talented he was, Romonus was not going to defeat Surtur, who had been using his for nearly 300 years. His own was forced back into his body, and he was thrown down to the ground in a crater. It was a miracle he was not unconscious as Surtur leapt down. Are you good? Romonus raised a shaky thumb. Peachy. He went limp as Surtur helped him up. That was fun, wasn't it? Romonus nodded. It was but painful. Ha ha. Pain just shows how we live. Now recover. Suji's up next. They both looked toward Rias, who was forming large orbs of destruction, much like their brother's signature move. Suji dodged and sliced them, but was impressive that she got it down so quickly. Romonus smiled as Rias was super talented naturally. She just needed someone or something to motivate her, and he was that motivator. She truly is the best. Rias was starting to tire out as Suji was relentless. Every time she launched an attack, he would weave, dodge, or cleave through them. Sometimes her attacks were just waves of destruction which were easy to dodge or tear apart for him. He would then tell her that the intensity of her power of destruction was lacking in control or weight. Romonus and Surzek both were monsters when it came to power of destruction. Surzek, in his true form, was essentially Pod in a human form. When he used it, his power was so immense, even gods feared it. Suji was unsure how strong he was, but Surzek was many times stronger than the original Lucifer. As for Romonus, he had yet to reach this level of mastery, but he had already found his path. He would form his pod into thin string-like strands which allowed him to dismantle, cleave, and annihilate with hundreds, if not thousands of threads of pure destruction. This was further increased by his gravity magic, which crushed everything in a general area, inverted gravity, or turned into solid constructs of gravitational energy with interesting effects. Romonus also was a skilled sword fighter as well, but he would often destroy his swords. Only by infusing his demonic energy and blood into the metal could he prevent this. At the moment, Romonus and Shatter were watching and waiting for Rias' large reserves to run out. They watched as her face turned into a frown as Suji still had his eyes closed. She looked over to Romonus, who raised his hands and pushed them together. Seeing the clue, she smiled as she did as he said. She placed her hands together and began to force her pod into shape. This made the knight open his eyes as he watched her launch a small orb of destruction at him. He smiled as she learned quickly, just like her brothers, even if one of them gave her the clue. Good job. He raised his katana and sliced it down with a single hand. From his blade, a massive blade of demonic energy cleaved her attack, which exploded with a massive explosion. Rias raised her arms to protect her eyes from the wind, but when she opened her eyes, she saw a huge 10-meter crater of destruction. Rias was curious now. Was that me or you? Suji pointed at her. That was you. Awesome. She jumped for joy as she learned something. She ran over to Romonus, who had already put his upper clothes back on. Did you see that, brother? I did what you told me. He smiled as he ruffled her hair a little. Sure did. Surzex taught me that one. Rias, you need to find your way to use power of destruction. Each one of us should have a way we use it, while I have my own. I never did show you right. Rias shook her head. No. Romonus smiled as he walked over to the open field. All right then, stand back. Shatter grabbed Rias and jumped away, as when Romonus got destructive, it was not pretty. Surzex at this point began to use his demonic energy to speed up his movements as he worked through his paperwork at lightning speed. He would have to talk to Ajuka to get his computer set up already, as this was hell. Luckily, he got finished soon enough and walked over to the window. Without his wings, he jumped down and landed quite next to Shatter, Suji, and Rias. Romonus smirked when he saw his older brother. Finish your homework, brother? Should I tell Grafia you're slacking? Rias looked next to her as she was still being carried in one of Shatter's arms. Hi, brother. Surzex waved at Rias with a smile. Good to see you again so soon, Rias. If you must know, Romonus, I'm done with my work. Now, let's see your technique. Suji here tells me it is so amazing. Romonus looked back at the open field as his demonic energy, which was massive from birth, was released. Thanks to his noble heritage, he was born with gigantic reserves, and training had only elevated them to new heights. The spell of purification he underwent the night before also increased the power behind his energy. He could do more with less, and he was going to be using it. From his entire body, waves of pod were released, which quickly became a massive mass of crimson-black destruction. At first, he seemed to just be releasing it wildly, but that quickly changed when he focused on his energy. Instantly, the massive amounts of pod he was releasing spun apart into hundreds of thin strands spinning around him, tearing up the field around him. The number of them continued to grow as he continued to create more of them. His reserves were enormous, so he could keep this up for a long time. He crossed his arms and with just his mind began to control the truly massive amount of giant threads. With perfect control, the threads of destruction began to rapidly cleave the area around and in front of him. Romonus acted as if there was a foe in front of him and uncrossed his arms to use his hands to direct his energy. With a move of the hand, huge number of threads cleaved through a large area of the field. He then came back with more to reduce everything in a general location to small cubes, which then vanished into nothingness. He raised his other hand and began to weave threads together into massive pillars, which he repeatedly into the same location, causing the field to shake. Romonus raised his hands into the air and collected all the pod threads into an orb that fit into his hand. He placed both of his hands around the orb while adding more pod and using powerful gravitational energy to force it into shape. Surzex focused and felt that this move was going to be good. He started to rub his hands together as Romonus felt it was enough. Since you call your move Ruin the Extinction, I will just call this move the End. Surzex smiled as Romonus tossed the orb in his hands into the sky. Rias, Shatter, Suji, and Surzex looked up wondering what it was going to do. It continued to rise higher until Romonus felt it reach the perfect height. He smiled as he snapped his fingers, and instantly his orb burst apart. Instantly, a massive orb of gravitational energy and pod formed in the air. The end was a move meant to destroy everything, and already everyone in the city of Lilith could see it. The gravity of Romonus' move began to pull everything toward it in the air. Loose items, anything not nailed down, began to fly into the sky. Surzex was about to intervene before things got dangerous, but Romonus raised his hand and dispersed it into energy. He wiped his forehead as that move was draining, but he could cast another 3 before he was out of energy. He then turned to his brother with a smile. "What do you think?" Surzex thought about it before he smirked. "Both of your moves are impressive. Combining gravity and the power of destruction is smart. Can you do that on a smaller scale?" "Of course. That was just an end-all move meant as a fuck you to everything in a general area. Imagine if I had launched that in the city." Surzex raised his hands. "Please don't do that. And I know what would happen. I could do the same and more." Romonus thought he was seeing things, but he could swear his brother's nose was growing longer. Surzex looked to the sky and bragged about his greatness. "Your move was strong, but I could do it bigger, stronger, faster, and easier. If I so wanted, I could destroy the whole underworld if I released the great power contained in my body. Yes, your older brother is amazing." "Ha ha 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 ha." Rias turned to look at Surzex with a deadpan expression. He is off the rocker again. Second, still carrying Rias, began to tiptoe away while Suji just vanished. Romonus sneaked away while Surzex continued to laugh. "But if you so asked, I will graciously train you on how to use your power just like me. Don't be shy, I do not mind." When he looked down, the only thing he was left with was the empty field. The wind blew through the field as he looked around. Where did everyone go? Just then he heard what he did not want to hear. "Surzex." When he turned around, he saw Graphia glaring at him. She looked at the destroyed field and then at her husband. He raised his hands as he tried to defend himself. "Wait, it wasn't me. It was Romonus. He did this." Graphia crossed her arms, not believing him. "Oh, really? Then where is he?" I heard a giant orb of power of destruction formed in the sky. "I am getting reports of the chaos, and now the field is a mess too." He left. Suji, Surt, and Rias were here training like always. They just ran off, leaving me with a mess. I swear. Graphia looked behind him and shook her head. "If that is true, then they should clean the mess. You're lucky your paperwork is finished." Surzex nodded. "Exactly, I got my work done, and my new computer will be ready soon." Graphia smiled at her husband, as when he was not slacking off, he was a wonderful husband. "All right then, let's find them and make them clean this." Surzex grinned as he would enjoy this game of cat and mouse. "You bet." Meanwhile, Surt ran with Rias on his shoulder with a laugh. "We are home free." Rias smiled as she looked at the giant man. "Ice cream." He nodded with a big grin. "Excellent idea. The best ice cream store in the underworld is here in Lilith. Let's go." He raised his fist into the air as he began to walk. Surzex and Graphia teleported in front of them. Surt freaked out as he backed away. Fancy seeing you here. What do I owe the pleasure?" Graphia walked forward with a serious expression. "You forgot to clean the mess?" Surt cleared his voice as he raised his arms. "Mess? What mess? I have been with Rias the whole time, right?" She nodded. "Yeah, we're going for ice cream." Graphia smiled as she pinched Rias' nose. "Ow, ow, ow, my nose. You little liar. You're going back and you're going to clean your mess. Surzex, you take them. I got Romonus and Suji to find." "Right." As Surzex teleported them back to the castle, Graphia teleported to her next target. As for Romonus, he began to walk towards Seraphal's castle. He wanted to see if she was still doing paperwork by hand or got a computer. He also wanted to see if she knew about his and McGregor's summoning of the Harvesta. The story his teacher told him was that spirits of the spirit realm could be summoned for single favors or contracted permanently. The Harvesta was a spirit of death of considerable power. No one had contracted him and only asked favors of him. Ajuka would be searching for answers and hopefully he did not find them. He decided to pray to God, his God. "Oh, Ravdal, God of insanity, please look after me. Amen." No pain, of course, but just as he was walking, Graphia appeared in front of him. Romonus looked up at the white-haired devil lady. "Hi, Auntie. Nice to see you again. We saw each other yesterday, right?" Graphia crossed her arms and smirked. "Where are you going?" "I was on a visit Seraphal, then Falbium, and then Ajuka." "What? You left a mess behind." He smiled. "Really? My brother's got it handled, but if why dash?" Suddenly he ran off. "Ha ha ha. Too slow." Just as he was running at blinding speeds, he felt a firm hand grab his shoulder and lift him off the ground. The shockwave of stopping so suddenly made him look behind him to see Graphia. "Auntie, you're faster than you look. Save it. Now to find Suji." Suji, instead of being caught, just gave up and walked out from the shadow of a tree. "Fine, here I am." Graphia smiled, as this was fun now and then. She put down Romonus before lightly bonking him on the head. "Did you cause the black hole?" He nodded. "I call it the end. It is powerful. Just don't cast it in city limits." "Yes, Auntie." Graphia smiled softly. "My sister would have loved you. You two were the same." He knew her family was a sore subject, as they were all dead except her brother, and he was a wanted criminal. Suji bowed and excused himself, as he was only here to train Romonus, and he missed his chance for the day because of Rias. "I will be back tomorrow for sword training." "Thank you, Master. I will look forward to it." Suji walked off and vanished as if the wind. Once he was gone, Graphia ruffled his hair. "Go visit Seraphal. She is quite lonely despite how bubbly she is." "Thanks, Auntie Gray." He ran off, but Graphia stoked smiling when she heard what he called her. "Hey, ha ha ha." She let him run off, as that was why she liked him. He treated her just like a fun aunt. She shook her head and teleported back to Surzex. As for Romonus, he had a date with a Satan. Hopefully. As Romonus walked through the capital city of Lilith, he passed the residents of the city who all looked shaken. He would be too if he saw a giant black hole of power of destruction appear above their home. Though, he did not talk to any of them as he moved east. The four castles of the Satans were separated north, east, west, and south, with the castle of his brother being north. Seraphal's castle was in the east section of the city, so that is how he began to move. As he did, he began to think about how he could in any way woo Seraphal. He did not want to do it just because his brother told him. He genuinely liked her for a few reasons. It took considerable willpower, self-respect, and loneliness to stay a virgin for almost 600 years. Even he as a human had slept with over 15 girls and women by age 17. Meanwhile, Seraphal was a devil known for sin and was a virgin for many times his life. She had also never had a boyfriend or girlfriend, so he would be that, if she accepted him. He smiled as he walked through the city, which was high-tech thanks to Ajuka. Cars and fancy carriages moved through the streets depending on taste. The lights in the city ran on ambient mana and needed no outside input. The devils who called the capital home were happy and living their lives. Though at the current moment, a lot of the residents were shaken up, they were starting to relax and go back to their regular activities. As he walked, he remembered that he had something important to do. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and called his fiancée. He put it up to his ear as he heard it ring a few times. She quickly picked up his call, as she had his ringtone set to something unique. "Romonus, calling me already?" She seemed happy to hear from him, which made him happy. "Well, I would be a terrible fiancé to ignore you for a long time. We were engaged just yesterday out of the blue, so I wanted to ask you on a date. We skipped the dating stage to the engaged because of our status, but we can still take out time before our marriage." Latia thought about it, as she was currently messing around in a mech she was assembling. As she was working, her phone floated near her, so she could talk and simultaneously. "That sounds nice, actually. Tomorrow seems good as I have no training scheduled. We can get to know each other more, and I can show you the results of my hobby, and you can show me yours. You did say you were getting into alchemy, right? Sounds good. I also should get this out of the way. Latia, how would you feel for me to have a harem?" Latia went silent, which made Romonus feel on edge. He even stopped walking as he waited for her answer. Instead of saying how she felt, she asked him a question. "Romonus, how many women do you think my father has in his harem?" Ajuka's brother is her dad, so more than likely very few. If he is anything like his older brother, he will be reserved. 10. Latia instantly lost her composure at his lowball answer. PFFFFF. She barely kept a straight face as she broke out laughing. No, not even close. He has 80 women in his harem, and I have no issue with it. Last week we were informed one of them fell pregnant, which is rare. Romonus did not expect the little brother of Ajuka to be such a man. When his older brother was a straight-up virgin, he had 80 ladies to himself. What a man. Congratulations on the sibling. I'm glad with your answer. In that case, when I get a harem, would you manage it for me? My mother manages my father's harem, as he has more than your father. But you can count that I won't have nearly that many. Latia felt that was fair as the head wife in the future. Sound good. How many would you think would be an okay number, Romonus? I don't know. Numbers aren't what I am after. I would want women like you, with personality, goals, ambitions, drive, and attractive enough to dazzle the world. His words made Latia smile. He was good with words at least. Despite being 11, as devils they were far more mature than human children of similar ages. Anything higher than simple flirting was off the table for another 4 or 5 years, though. You flirt. See you tomorrow. I'm almost done with my mech suit. Show me a picture when it's done. I will do you one better and let you wear it. Sounds awesome. I will let you sample some of my elixirs. They hung up the call, which made him smile. Latia was the best, and she was going to turn into a hottie in a few short years. He could hardly wait to marry her. Out of how happy he was, his wings emerged from his back. He only had 2, but they were very different from normal devil wings. His wings were larger, more muscular, and covered in runic tattoos he made himself. Instead of the thin stick wings of devils, his wings truly looked demonic. A perk of working under pure insanity, aka his boss. As for the runes, they pulsed a deep crimson, which he modeled after bloodthirster runes of hatred. They protected his wings from attack, and magic increased their strength. His unique wings were his pride and joy, so they deserved the best. Image here. With a powerful flap of his wings, he blasted into the sky as he flew east. He was not the only one flying, but he was certainly the fastest. A few devils were flying after his student, but a few were brave enough to risk it. Those could barely see him as he was that fast. He left after images and made it across the city in a minute. When he reached Seraphal's castle, he retracted his wings and began to spin midair. He tucked his legs and landed in front with a heavy impact. He grinned and made a double peace sign. Crushed it. In front of the castle, 2 female devil guards turned to look at him. One of them looked to be about 30, and from the look of it already, was used to his antics. She rolled her eyes as she leaned on her great sword. She had long purple hair and a large braid with a mature, voluptuous body. She looked quite a bit like Minamoto no Reiku from Fate in his opinion. Image here. Her fellow guard looked to be about 16, with short blonde hair, with a much slimmer body. Not like any Fate character despite what one would expect. The blonde did not recognize him, so she got her spear. Halt! This is Dash. Before she got done with her statement, the older guard bonked her on the head. Cut it out, I know the kid. Romonus, back to bother me again. He grinned as he hopped over before falling to one knee and pulling out a regular rose. He waved his hand and turned it purple just like her hair. Of course, how could I forget to come to visit the most beautiful lady of the underworld? You dazzle in the fake sun, Miria. Marry me. I swear to make you the happiest in the world. Miria rolled her eyes as he often came over to flirt with her. Since he was 9 of all things. Sure. Why are you here, kid? Romonus placed the rose in her hand and stood back up. She did not throw it away and kept it. I am here to see the short queen. Seraphal. The younger guard covered her mouth to contain her laugh. Miria stomped on her foot to keep her focused. It caused the new blonde's eyes to begin to water. Her superior did not hold back in her stomp. She could swear her foot was broken. Miria cleared her voice as she stepped aside. Go on. Seraphal doesn't have many friends, and I'd rather you not flirt me to death, so go flirt with her instead. He placed a hand over his heart. Wow, Miria, that is how low you think of me. And here I thought I was getting past your icy exterior. She snorted with a pout on her face. I am not icy, you're just not my type. Grow a little older and bigger. Then we will see what happens. Take it or leave it. That just made him smirk, as she was only 2 inches taller than him. Miria, I am 11. Give me 4 years, and I will tower over you. As for muscles, I got that in spades. He flexed hard, causing the fancy suit he was still wearing from the ball to stretch. Certain knew how to train a body, but Miria did not look. Her face got a little red as he was quickly starting to look like Saror did in the anime. Just get going. He just smiled in her direction. You know you like it, love? As he walked past Miria, he told her about something she was insecure about. A bit of an inside joke among them. As he was behind her, he looked at her ass and made a joke she hated. All right, your butt is starting to sag. Her eyes went wide as she spun around to kick him, but he was long gone. You asshole. Her ass was perfect and sexy, but she just felt embarrassed about being 875 and not married. Nothing to be ashamed about, as his mother was about to turn 934 in 4 months. As Miria cursed up a storm, the blonde guard looked over at her, ass wondering if it was true. It didn't look to be sagging at all. Just then she heard the voice of the devil. Literally, what are you looking at? When she looked up, Miria looked red in the face out of shame and anger. She quickly made a lie on the spot. There's a rip in your pants. Miria's big purple eyes seemed about to cry with rage and shame. Lies. For that, you're going to have triple drills. No. Sarah Fall had a big smile on her face as she messed around with her new computer. It made everything so easy. She just scrolled, read, accepted, or denied with the click of a button. With how fast a devil like her could process information along with the aid of the tech of a juka, it freed up so much time. A job that would take hours of non-stop paperwork could be finished many times faster. She smiled as she remembered when a juka brought this over a few hours ago. He already had them made and was just waiting until they asked. She straightaway asked him for one, and he delivered, though she wondered why he seemed distracted. Though he is always distracted. Just as she finished this set of papers, the door to her office opened. She looked at who it was and saw Romonus. For the past year, he had been visiting her every week. Birthday boy. She got up from her chair and ran over to hug him. He hugged her back as well, but her strength still exceeded his by a fair bit despite being more of a mage. Despite him being in the ultimate class, she was at the middle point of the next rank, which Romonus was commonly called the Satan class by some devils. A better term for it would be god rank split between weak gods, middle-class gods, high-class gods, and peak gods. Super devils, heavenly dragons, and beings on that level were hard to classify, though. Seraphal, I see you got your computer. She let go of him with a smile. Yeah, check it out. I can even play games, or video call my Sona. Want to play a game? Sure. When we get done with that, I was wondering if you would go on a date with me. Seraphal titled her head. Huh? Me? With you? He nodded with a smile. Sure. I mean, you act more like someone my age than I do, so it fits. Seraphal frowned at the hidden insult. You just call me childish. How rude. Now I won't go on a date with you. He smiled as he pinched her cute cheeks. No, I called you adorable. Quit it. She rubbed her cheeks when he let go. Did Zex put you up to this? That jerk. He shook his head. No. He sure asked, but I'm doing it for me. I think you are cute and a pretty woman. It could be a simple outing as friends if you want. I got no rush. She began to chuckle as Romonus knew what he wanted, and he went for it. I will bite. I got my work done thanks to this computer. Where do you have in mind? He knew several places someone like Seraphal would enjoy. How about we go to this nice, all-you-can-eat restaurant? The food is cheap and to die for. My treat. She thought about it carefully before relenting. Fine. He grinned in happiness. You won't regret it, Seraphal. I never say it, but I love saying your name. It's cool. She smiled as she liked her name too. Thank you. That is so thoughtful of you. He chuckled as it seemed he was the older one of the two. The only difference was she had large breasts to go along with her short height. Come on then, before you get more work. Right. Let's go. When he and Seraphal walked out, he winked at Miria, who grit her teeth like a feral lioness. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. That little brat will pay for playing with my heart. He will pay when I get my hands on him. Romonus would soon learn to not tempt older, single, lonely ladies like Miria. After leaving her castle, Romonus and Serafal did not have to teleport or fly to reach the restaurant in question. It was a 5-minute walk from her castle, which she rarely got to do before she got her computer. The bureaucracy of the Devil Council and Great King faction was to keep the Satans occupied instead of at their throats. Because if Surzex, Ajuka, Serafal, and Falbium decided to not play nice, they would in theory take full control over devils. At least those that survived the Second Civil War, which was why they played along. They did not care about a ruling or anything of the sort. They just wanted to be with their loved ones and keep to their hobbies. In her case, dress up like a magical girl, which Romonus brought up. When did you get into your magical girl fascination? The 80s. She rubbed the back of her head with a smile. 90s, I was in Japan at the time meeting with the Shinto god because we wanted to have territory in Japan. Amaterasu agreed to let us take partial ownership over Kuo, as long as we followed some ground rules. No mass killing, keeping things down low, and not drawing attention to ourselves. During the meetings, I saw the first magical girl Milky Spiral anime, and I was enthralled. Is that weird? He shook his head as they had already reached the restaurant. No, I like anime too, but I just prefer fantasy anime rather than that. Serafal smiled. Cool. Want to watch it with me someday? Sure, I can give it a shot. Mind showing me how you transform? He might as well have told her to show him her life, which caused her face to beam with a smile, so dazzling his heart skipped a beat. Serafal began to spin around, and with glittery magical girl effects, change her outfit into her magical girl Milky Spiral 7 cosplay, with the staff and everything. She winked at him and spun around. Sparkle, shine, your command is mine. His eyes were drawn to her bouncing boobs before he looked away, as if he was not Issei. He was not going to ogle her to death, though he did remember it. He started to clap with a smile on his face. You are the cutest Satan. Serafal frowned as she leaned on him, pressing her soft back against his body. That's not a contest, Romonus. Falbium is old and bald. Ajuka is a big frowny boy, and your brother Surzex is a big sibling con. He always brags about you, and Rias saying how proud he is to be your big brother. He carries pictures of you two around and brags about you two to the old Devil Council. Even those old fools who have been alive since devils were created have lost patience with him. Come on, don't get another compliment from me. Maybe something hotter. He got bold as he knew a girl like Serafal probably heard all this before. He reached down and wrapped his arms around her bare waist before pulling her in. Her face began to heat up as he hugged her tight. You are without question the cutest, most fun devil Serafal Leviathan. She smiled as she looked up at his handsome face. You're quite bold, Romonus. Do you want me for your harem? You just got engaged, and you're after my pure maiden heart too? What will Latias say? He leaned down and rested his chin on the top of her hat. I asked her before trying my luck. She is okay with it. And you know what I told her? If I want someone for my harem, it is because they pass the criteria. She reached up behind her and ran a hand down his cheek. Are you 11? You're making my heart skip a beat. He smiled as he released her. Come on then, we can talk more over a meal. As for my maturity, when you're a noble, you're forced to mature quickly to deal with all the schemes. She smiled sadly as they walked into the restaurant. That is true. Just know that you got good points for all your words. Keep that up, and you just might win my heart over. Count on it, my lady. When they entered the restaurant, they paid for two for the buffet option. The girl at the register almost passed out when she saw not just the famous Gremory heir, but Serafal Leviathan on a date. At their restaurant, which was not fancy for nobles. It was more in use for reincarnated devils, as this was more of a human term, so most nobles would be caught dead before they entered here. As for Romonus, he did not care about nobility, and Serafal was open to try anything. So once they were given a table, they both got to pick out the foods they wanted, which was a mix of Chinese, Mexican, and Italian in a good mix. Once they were seated and they started eating, Romonus looked across from him as Serafal ate. Each time she tried a new dish, her face beamed in a happy smile. How did you find out about this place, and why have I never heard of it? He stuck a fork in a crab cake and brought it up to his mouth. I have been training at my brother's castle since I was 5 years old when his peerage began to train me. Sir II would take me out to have ice cream or eat at new restaurants opening up. This one opened up 5 years ago, and the food is excellent. As for how you never heard of it, do you have time to explore the city? Serafal sighed. True. Before I got my computer, I would spend hours with more and more paperwork. Now, I get my work done leagues faster than before. It freed up a big chunk of my day. I'm glad it did, because then I can see more of your pretty face when you eat. She reached up and held her cheeks. Aw, you're so sweet. Am I really that cute? What do you like about me? Your long raven hair, your sparkling pink eyes, your bubbly face, and your personality too. You also are a powerhouse with authority to your name. When other pantheons think of the name Leviathan, who do they imagine? She leaned forward and rested her chin on her palms. Me? He nodded. Lady Serafal Leviathan, stronger than the original Levi and on the merit of her efforts. Just having that makes you an outlier among our race. That is most important to me, a drive to improve. Serafal looked at her plate before looking up at him. You know, for that, I will give you a shot. I have had many suitors who were after my looks, my authority, my body, or my status, but to you, they're just something that defines me. I like that. He reached out across the table and held her hands. How does it feel that an 11-year-old is better than any of your previous suitors? She smiled playfully as she squeezed his hands gently. Better? Maybe. Haha. Let's enjoy our meal, as I'm sure you will have more work soon. She nodded as they went back to enjoying their meal. However, Romonus realized he was being followed. He looked up from his food and looked out the window of the restaurant. In the window of the restaurant, Rias was glaring right at him. Serafal was going to look at what he did, but he raised a hand and blocked her view. It's nothing. Just a window cleaner. Oh. By that point, Rias was gone, making Romonus gulp. He may now have a stalker, which he did not expect. Did I go too far? No. When they finished eating, Serafal returned to her castle, while Romonus teleported back to the Gremory household. He was quite happy that Serafal Leviathan was open to his advances, as he really liked her. Despite her age, she acted more like a child than he did, which was saying a lot. When he returned to the mansion, he appeared directly in his room. Once he was here, he waved his hands, and his suit flew off his body before falling into place over a mannequin. His battle suit flowed over his body once more as he now wanted to test something. He walked over to his door and locked it before sitting down on his bed. Romonus looked over at his right hand, where he had his spatial ring. He brought out the demonic sword blood drinker. Even while in its sheath, he could feel the spirit of the sword hungering for blood. He slowly drew it out of its sheath and looked at the master-crafted demon sword. It was many times larger than regular long swords, as it was bordering on becoming a greatsword while remaining a longsword. He placed the sword on his lap and began to circulate his demonic energy through the blade. He closed his eyes as his Tuki of life force hummed to life at the same time as he reached out to the blade. The story his uncle told him was that the vampire who had their soul and body rendered down to create this had wronged the Bale clan. What that meant he did not know, which was bad enough that the Bale clan went after a vampire noble. They must have been a powerful noble, because the aura this sword was giving off was off the charts. As he did this, he began to feel Blood Drinker call out to him. The spirit of the blade knew he was a worthy wielder, feeling the power he drew. But now that he had Tuki unlocked, he could feel life force in the blade. Either from the process it was made, all the blood it fed on, or the vampire was still alive. He did not know, but as he continued to reach the spirit of the sword, he fell into the trance. He appeared in a realm of pure darkness, which he assumed to be the soul of the sword. He looked across from him and saw a female in chains. Each chain ended in a spike that stabbed into her body in brutal ways, with devil runes of binding covering each one. As for the vampire herself, she looked young, 20s, with soft features. Image here. Blood constantly leaked from her wounds, so he walked forward until he was in front of her. She looked down at him with heterochromatic eyes. One was blood red, and the other a familiar purple, though she also had a pair of wings and horns. You are not pure blood. You're a vampire-devil hybrid. She slacked in the chains before launching out, trying to bite his throat out. Instead, he grabbed her chin with one hand and leaned in to look her in the eyes with his own. Here is how it will work. You will make a contract with me. In exchange for me feeding you the blood of my enemies, You will not drain my lifespan or plot against my well-being. If you refuse this contract, I will simply render you down for scrap metal. Your choice, love." She snarled before yelling out at the world. "Damn you, Zekrom Bal. You and all of your descendants live to make me suffer." "Fine, I agree." Using his devil powers, he formed the contract, as she had been starved of blood for centuries. Her suffering was eternal, and unless she was fed blood, often the pain these demonic chains and runes inflicted on her was maddening. But they also protected her mind from breaking, making it a never-ending hell. Tears began to spill from her eyes as she looked at the ground. "Please free me. I don't want to suffer anymore." At that moment, the runes began to glow before he fired pure demonic energy through her body, which was her soul. Her screams filled the realm, but Romonus simply crossed his arms as she squirmed in pain. When the torture ended, she fell, slack, feeling dead, but she was healed by the same things that tormented her. "What did you do to piss off the Bale clan anyway? And what is your name?" She looked up into his eyes, showing the pain and madness in her eyes. "I am Vespera Carmilla Bale, and I killed my father, Zekrom Bale's grandson, for the rape of my mother. As punishment, Zekrom Bale himself hunted me down and had me turned into this damn sword. And you? I am Romonus Gremory, a distant relative. If what you say is true, your suffering might come to an end. If you're truthful to me, that is. Until then, I will get you the blood you need, Vespera." She fell slack once again, and he returned to his body. She didn't lie. Nothing she said was a lie, as their souls had been in contact. He felt the pain and the truth of her words. He raised Blood Drinker and looked into the screaming face on the crossguard. He leaned forward and rested his forehead against the blade. "Don't worry, Vespera. I promise the day you walk free again will come. Just give me time." The blade did not respond, but he could swear that the presence seemed to calm. For now, he pulled a vial of his blood from his ring. He poured it along the blade and watched as his blood was drawn into the metal. Instantly, through the contract he made with Vespera, he could sense her pain lessen. He would need to supply her with constant blood until he could free her, because she did not deserve such a fate. He may not be a good guy, but this was beyond him. Zekrom Bale is a true devil to do this to his great-granddaughter, but he is the first devil made, so he must be the closet to a demon. With a shake of the head, Romonus placed Blood Drinker back in its sheath and kept it at his side. Knowing that the vampire noble who had been turned into Blood Drinker was his relative, his thoughts on the matter changed greatly. By being in touch with her soul, he could feel her agony. She had only sought vengeance on her father for raping her mother, and the punishment was being tortured for centuries on end without being able even to go insane. That is dark, even for me. He placed the sword onto his bed as the day was still early. He had plenty of time until tomorrow, when he would have to present himself for sword training with Suji and then his date with Latia. After I get my evil pieces, I should get a kino for my bishop, as she does not use the traits of the Knight of Rookwell. Someone better for that would be someone like Tiamat, the strongest Dragon King. Too bad I am not crazy enough to challenge her yet. Asia is an okay option, but she can't fight at all. Better to have her as a lovable healer rather than a fighter. He kept thinking of options, as he had one picked out for his knight already. Tobio accused because of his Longinus Canis Lyacon. Issei at the start of the canon is 17 and Tobio is 22. And Tobio was 17 years old in the prequel novel /Dog, so 5 years before canon, which to me isn't 7 years, so I have 2 years to find him and convince him to join my peerage. Once he got his pieces, he would search for Tobio as Azazel met him already. Depending if he played his cards right, he could befriend Valley and Azazel, who were important characters in the novel. So complicated, but so simple. Regardless, he pulled his phone out and called up his teacher McGregor again. The British mage picked up quickly, as he always had his phone near him. "Romonus, Surtur told me you unlocked your Tuki. Quite an impressive feat. I learned this from Suji, but try to extend it into your blades, which will allow you to cut through defenses easier. I will train in the method. The reason I was calling was because I had questions on the spirit realm. You said we could make permanent contracts with the spirits, and I was wondering why no one had ever contracted the Harvesta. It has to do with power and pride. The stronger beings of the spirit realm are prideful and mighty, so they don't like to form contracts with us. The harvester in particular can be summoned easily, but it is up to his whim to accept or not. If you're thinking of forming a contract with him to keep it by you at all times, good luck. If you succeed, I will teach you how everything I know about the spirit realm. Until then, start reading the grimoire if you have time. McGregor hung up, so Romonus sat down on his bed and pulled out the grimoire on souls. He placed a hand on the cover before flipping it over to the first page. He first read the first thing McGregor had written. The soul is the most important, vulnerable, and strongest thing we all share. From the weakest of bugs to the mighties of dragons and gods. By itself, the soul is just energy like mana, demonic power, ki, prana, or any number of energies. But once one can tap into their soulscape, one can begin to use and grow their soul, anchoring the soul to its mortal shell. Instantly, Romonus became entranced as his soul was stronger than others. That was because, according to McGregor, the soul of an individual grew as they lived. It was a small growth, but he had lived 17 years as a human before this life. When he was reborn, his soul had been touched by Ravdal, the god of insanity. During his gestation, his soul had changed to match his new species. The touch of demonic energy and offshoot of mana and all his training had sped the growth of his soul to a level it should not have at this point yet. Even someone like Surzex had yet to touch upon their souls. As usual, only evil dragons, liches, dark mages, or divines had access to the soul. Ajuka was a maybe, which was why finding a mage like McGregor who was paving this path was such a blessing. He had several ideas and inspirations like Mojito Idol Transfiguration, Dark Souls Magic, and Lucius Zograti Soul Magic. He reached out and placed Blood Drinker onto his lap as he read the grimoire. Maybe, if he understood the soul better, he might be able to help Vespera or speed up the reincarnation of kill dragons. He also had to ensure that Valerie Teeps did not fall into the hands of Rise of him Lucifer. With her, he could remove his weakness to holy magic, silver, holy water, and holy swords. With her, he could resurrect long-dead monsters, heroes, or villains for his service. Regardless, he got rid of all his thoughts and dived into reading the grimoire. Despite McGregor making it as simple as possible, reading this was both reading and esoteric because of the different magic circles he was looking at. As the more he read, the more he felt information enter his mind as he learned things he hadn't thought about before. But after reading only a couple pages in 3 hours, he suddenly felt a splitting headache. He closed the grimoire and rubbed his forehead. Damn. From what he understood of the grimoire, reading it was using soul energy to comprehend, and he was out. Just like mana or demonic energy, it would recover after resting. That was exactly what he did, as still holding Blood Drinker, he fell asleep. He still had more training to do, but that could wait until later. He was far too exhausted from running out of soul energy to do anything, so he slept. While he did so, his demonic energy, which was flowing through his entire body, began to be converted into soul energy by his soul slowly. Sleeping was the best method to recover from a long day of training, both spiritual and physical. Plus, now having unlocked his 2-key, his recovery was faster than usual. Another trump card in his arsenal for the future for sure. He ended up waking up 4 hours later, and when he did so, he rubbed his head. He grabbed his sword and got up from the bed. Damn, reading this grimoire is going to suck. With a quick circulation of his demonic energy, he woke himself up and also cleaned himself off. He would shower later, as now it was time to get back to his training, which never ended up for him. Without a sacred gear, he could only rely on himself, which was fine by him. All his power was because of him, not because of God. He took a deep breath as he opened a teleport circle under his feet. Because he was a noble, he knew of ways onto the earth without needing to take the transport trains. With a flash, he vanished from his room and appeared on Earth, more specifically Antarctica, where no humans lived aside from researchers. It was one of his favorite places to train, as he could go all out without being bothered. The only things that lived here were penguins, seals, whales, and birds. Though, from the look of it, he was alone at his usual spot. Once he was here, he sat down and began to think about one magic that was used by every faction. Barriers, isolated fields, or bounded fields keep the supernatural hidden from the non-magical. Bounded fields are underutilized. If I can use a bounded field to form a domain expansion, I could, in theory, use Malevolent Shrine or my original domain. One that completely defines me. Might as well give it a shot. He got up to his feet and waved his hand to open a bounded field. Thanks to the teaching he had undergone as both a noble and McGregor's apprentice, his use of field was excellent. He separated a space of 2.5 miles in his bounded field, creating a separate space. Okay, here we go. From his back, his large demon wings with their glowing runic tattoos emerged. He tensed them and blasted off into the sky, where he positioned himself in the middle of his field. He took a deep breath as he raised his hands and formed a hand sign that called to him. One Sukuna would recognize, but if he could steal others' bodies, he could steal his sign. With his field as the core, he filled it with his techniques, aka power of destruction and gravity as the attack. This was a place where he was king. Getting a foe in a bounded field normally just meant they could fight until 1-1. But if he got this right, his bounded field would evolve into a domain expansion, drawing on all the knowledge he had gained, his years of mentoring and training. He remembered his boss, the presence Ravdal had. When he opened his eyes, they began to glow a deep purple. Within this canvas, imbue your techniques into this barrier. Dye it in your colors, and create an expression of yourself. This is me, Romonus Gremory, heir of the Gremory clan. Destruction made manifest. Domain expansion. Catastrophic singularity. His massive bounded field was instantly warped by the expression of his technique. From a simple barrier to keep something trapped, it became the end of the ones trapped. The barrier tore apart as thousands of streams of demonic energy and threads of power of destruction began to weave together. The runic tattoos engraved onto his wings glowed deeper as they became amplifiers for his technique. Potent gravitational fields began to force it all together, causing his energy reserves to drain rapidly. It was not an issue, though, thanks to his Gremory clan trait, his reserves were innately higher than other devils. Unlike Sukuna, who created a shrine, he created the embodiment of all destruction. Much like his movie The End, his domain expansion turned the entirety of his bounded field into a giant black hole of energy of destruction, just bigger. Instantly, the embodiment of pure destruction enveloped his domain, which both shocked and overjoyed him. However, in his honest opinion, using his domain like this was tricky because he turned a massive area into a giant power of destruction black hole. With his energy dangerously low, his domain burst apart and with it the contract. Once it was gone, he took a deep breath as forming that domain took a lot of his energy. Okay, that one needs more work. He flapped his wings and landed on the ground before retracting them. The end was a powerful move he could use more than once, but his domain made a giant one by converting a bounded field into the core of one. However, fueling a giant one was hard as his energy began to drain rapidly just maintaining it. I better practice to get it down like Gojo and Sukuna. As long as I can use infinitely close to no energy, I will never run out. Though this move wouldn't even be a big deal in Warhammer 40k. It was a good thing that even if he did get sent to Warhammer 40k or Fantasy, for any reason Ravdal would protect him. The god of insanity would not risk losing a talent like Romonus to a mere chaos god, as those were not even gods. They were just entities formed of human emotion, so they did not deserve to be called gods. Just alien entities from another dimension. As for Romonus, he felt a lot better about finding a better use of bounded fields. Though if he could think of it, couldn't someone else do the same? This needed further consideration. Regardless, he sat down, and from his spatial ring, he pulled out a pure mana stone. His master gave him several for his use if he ever needed to recover his energy faster. He drained and converted the mana inside into demonic energy to recover his reserves. Once he had recovered his energy, he continued the rest of his training, mainly training in using Blood Drinker, which was immune to the power of destruction because of Vespera, Considering it was used by the Bale clan during the Great War, that made sense. Was that the reason they turned her into this thing, or was it truly just a sick punishment? Only Zekrom Bale will know, so why did he give it to me? He reached out to her through their contract, which allowed him to communicate with her without having to enter the blade. How do you feel? How do you think? Thanks for the blood. I will need more. I know. I did promise to get you out eventually. I have waited centuries. Waiting a decade or two will just be part of my hell. He raised Blood Drinker and channeled his recovered demonic energy into the blade. Instantly, it was covered in the power of destruction. Time to get this down. He began to spar against what he felt his sword master Suji would do. It was a good thing he had Vesper on his side, as she was a truly powerful being. As the great-granddaughter of Zekrom Bale and the child of a noble vampire of the Carmilla faction, she was innately powerful. It was for that reason that Zekrom Bale, his ancestor, had to intervene personally to kill her. He gripped the handle of Blood Drinker the sword and thought about it. He had yet to meet the man, but he had only heard positive things. His uncle, grandfather, and even Surzex told him good things about the man. Feeling his doubt, Vespera reached out to him through their link. Whose side will you pick? Depends. He pulled out another vial of his blood and poured it over the blade. He watched as it was drawn inside before thinking. Who was your mother? Vespera went silent, but answered, I don't know. Romonus raised an eyebrow as he gazed at the sword. You don't know? No. I was told my mother died at childbirth, and I was raised by my relatives. Raised is pushing it, though. He remembered how vampires hated mixed blood even more than devils. He did not know what they would think of a girl like Vespera born of the rape of one of their kind. Or was it, and you killed your father because you knew what he did or thought you did? I was told all my life by the vampires around me that he forced himself on my mother. I felt it right for me to take vengeance. And in the end, Zekrom Bale himself hunted me down and ordered me forged into this thing. She said the last part with both venom and pain. He looked at the sky while holding the large sword in his right hand. What would you say if you found out you were wrong? I wouldn't know what to do with myself. It has been so long since the day he defeated me. I still remember the day I was forged, having my body ripped apart for material, having my soul forged into this metal, having it chained into place, then sealed away to never be seen again. This sword has had 4 wielders before you, all of the Bale clan, and none ever communicated with me. In the end, I drained their lives to nothing. After that, I was locked away in the vaults of the Bale clan, never to be touched again until you came along. So, the chances you were tricked into killing your father? I'd rather not be the case. Try to hang in there until I can get you out or lessen your pain. The blood helps. Take that as you will. With that, she went dormant again because the chains on her soul tormented her constantly. Blood could only dull her pain, never ended. He sighed as he returned Blood Drinker to the sheath on his hip. It was getting late, and his family might be wondering about him. He opened another teleport circle under his feet, and through the paths he knew returned to his room in a flash of light. He sighed when he was back in his room, as Vespera's existence messed with him. He sighed as he waved his hand and changed his battle suit back to his fancy suit. Once his suit was back on, he walked out of his room. When he opened the door, he saw Rias about to open his door. Rias and Romonus locked eyes as she pulled her hand away. She looked like she was caught with a hand in the cookie jar. Mom said check up on you? He snorted as he ruffled her crimson hair. Really? Because it looked like you wanted to go in my room. She pushed his hand away and turned away from him. You went into mine? He walked past her with his head raised high. That was your fault because you never wake up. Anyway, I usually train with Suji McGregor and Surt every weekend, sometimes more if they have free time. Tomorrow I will be seeing Suji for sword training, so wake up at 6:30, okay? She nodded. Okay, I need to get stronger. More than you know. She tilted her head. What do you mean? He smiled with a mysterious smile as he walked away. She chased after him, trying to get an answer from him. Come on, brother, what did you mean? You said, more than you know? Why? Is Riser super strong or something? Who knows? I certainly don't. She reached out and pulled on his arm. Brother, you always tell me everything. Why won't you? I'll do anything. He looked down at her and smiled. Anything? Are you sure? She nodded. Yes. He turned around and leaned down. I will do it for a kiss on the cheek. She blushed a little before planting a peck on his cheek. Is that good? He smiled at how cute she was becoming. In a few short years, she would go from an innocent girl to a seductive bombshell. It was almost sad. You need to be stronger so you can protect yourself and everyone you care about. She looked confused. But you and Surzex don't need me to protect you. You two are strong. We might not always be around Rias. If that happens, it will be up to you. He was thinking of Trihexa because Surzex, Seraphol, Falbium, Azazel, and many other leaders of pantheons sealed themselves away to defeat the beast. Even then, it would take centuries with all of them to seal it, and he might have to go with them if he could not stop rise of him. Feeling how serious he got, Rias reached out and held his arm. You and Zex aren't going anywhere, right? No, not if we can help it. She hugged him tight, worried. Why? Don't leave me behind. Don't leave me alone. He held her tight as he tried to appease her. I won't. I'm not going anywhere. You know how fast I'm growing stronger. Give me another 5 years, and very few beings will even be a challenge. I told you right. I will become the first devil to become a god. Can a god of devils allow himself to be defeated? She shook her head. You better not. She let go of him and ran off somewhere. Seeing how worried she got for him made him smile before his face turned cold. Kateria Leviathan, Shalba Beelzebub, Cruisery Asmodeus, and Rise of him Lucifer. The 4 bloodlines of the Satans will be mine. I just need to push my bloodline into the super devil level and then ascend to godhood. Seeing how strong Surzex was as still immortal, how strong would he be as a super devil turned god? Regardless, that was a goal for the distant future, so for now, he went to meet with his parents. They were not worried for him, as it was not uncommon for him to vanish for days in his training. He had been doing so since he was 7, so he just checked on how they were doing. His mother, Venelana, as usual, was either managing her husband's large harem or dealing with the business owned on Earth by the Gremory clan. This time, he found her engaged in 20 different calls simultaneously as she dealt with different business decisions. She just gave him a smile, which let him know she was busy, so he left her be. His father was in his office, as well working on stacks of paperwork, as the Astaroth and Phoenix clans were giving more business deals now that they were going to be married together. However, the Phoenix clan was less happy than the Astaroth as Rias hated Riser, or at the least disliked him to the point of curing his name openly. After a quick checkup, his father also didn't have much time to talk, which he was fine with. He left his parents alone and instead went back to his room where he had a few things to do. His training for the day was over, so he began to mess around with his hobby, alchemy. As the heir to the clan, his connections were wide, so he had endless resources to use and experiment with. This was both a hobby and a skill worth having, which was why he spent so much time on it. Too bad he was working blind, as alchemy in this verse was limited in use. Unless he could go to China and meet with the gods who were more versed in this than anyone else. He shook his head as he spent the next few hours brewing different potions, or poison in some cases. He would note down the different results when different herbs, monster body parts, poisons, and venoms had when they reacted together. In the end, he brewed a few more blood resurgence potions and some simple healing potions. He even created a new poison, which he found some use for, so he noted down the recipe. Once he finished his brewing, he cleaned up his alchemy set and walked to his personal bathroom. Much like everything in Devil Society, it was massive as it was made with the fact that he was expected to have a harem in the future. Fertility was a common issue among devils, so they made up for it with many female lovers to have a chance to produce a child. For him, it was empty as his fiancée Latia was still a new relationship. No matter how powerful or mature, he was still 11. Damn you, number 11. Turn into 18 already and show me my greatness. He sighed as he showered under the magical water. It nourished his skin and hair along with the body wash and shampoo made for nobles like him. Once all the stress of the day was gone, he got dressed and returned to bed. Though instead of sleeping, he began to train in his two-key control and his internal demonic energy circulation. Using both at the same time would allow him to increase his physical abilities to new extremes. He did this for the next hour until he felt that it was too late. When he checked his phone, he saw that it was already 3:30 a.m. It was very late, and he only had 3 hours to sleep. That was fine as he did not need much sleep, so he set his alarm and finally fell asleep. As he slept, he healed from the stress of the day, and for those 3 hours as at peace. But as he was used to just 3 hours later, he was awoken at the time of training, 6:30 a.m. He sighed as he only woke up this early on weekends. Yesterday was Friday, which meant that his teachers had time to train him on a day they all had off. Today was Saturday, but he only had to train with Suji in the art of the sword today, as McGregor was off doing who knows what he did in his free time. Mages were kind of scary when they were focused on their Rias search, and McGregor Mathers was no exception. Regardless, he got himself dressed and went to wake up Rias, who was actually awake without him waking her up. She was already dressed in training clothes, and he teleported back to the capital Lilith. To avoid pissing off Graphia, he would use a bounded field to not damage the field again. When they arrived, Suji was already waiting. He smiled when he saw Rias. "Rias, glad of you to join us again. I will teach you after I teach Romonus. In the meantime, work on your control, or watch us, and draw inspiration." She nodded. "Yes, sir." Suji then turned to Romonus with a calm smile. He began to draw his katana as Romonus drew Blood Drinker. "Show me what you have learned." "Right." Suji was never physically mighty, as Romonus could outperform him in strength many times over. He never specialized in strength or put the most power behind his sword. Instead, he had focused on being the fastest. As a human, his sword style favored quick-paced moves and control, which became his signature skill as a knight, Godspeed. He was both the fastest and most skilled knight of all devils. He had done his best through the years to improve, and he had grown a mastery of his knight pieces no other had before. Ever since he began to train Romonus in the art of the sword, he saw how Romonus took his teachings and changed them to suit his style. Thanks to Searcher's insane training, he had unlocked Tuki, a rare skill among devils, and McGregor taught him to use his sword as a magic focus. Now, he was going to show him that one didn't need to be skilled in magic or physically powerful to win a sword match. Romonus gripped the handle of Blood Drinker with both hands as he pointed it towards Suji. Suji held his katana with both hands as both of them stood still. Time began to slow down as both of them let go of everything and focused on their swords. Rias clenched her hands together as she waited for the moment they moved. When she blinked, they had already vanished, reminding her that her brother had many years more training than she did. Romonus had taken the teaching of Suji and his Godspeed training for himself. Of course, he was not yet as fast as his teacher, but he was getting there thanks to his much stronger body. A thin layer of Tuki shimmered around his body, while the demonic energy inside his body increased his physical ability. Both abilities together allowed him to blitz forward as he swung his sword down toward his master. Suji, though, released a hand from his sword and swung upwards against Blood Drinker. Using pure skill, he raised his hand and made Romonus swing against the ground. "Don't think so." Romonus gripped the handle of his blade, spread his feet out, and swung back up mid-swing. Vespera, as the core of the demon sword, channeled her own demonic energy, which was massive, into the swing which Suji felt. The knight kicked off the ground and leapt out of the way as an energy wave of demonic energy and Tuki cut through where he was standing. He grinned as he formed a platform of demonic energy and kicked off it to jump down. "We're picking up the passe. Speed trumps power." Suji vanished as he swung his blade toward Romonus' neck, who reacted on pure instinct. Tuki allowed one to react to threats against their life, so he swung Blood Drinker down and clashed against Suji's katana. Suji was stopped in his tracks thanks to Romonus' raw power, but he knew Suji was holding back. In the light novel, at full power, Suji cleaved a leg off the Jabberwocky, a 200-meter-tall monster created by Annihilation Maker, with ease. If he had wanted to, he could have taken his neck at that moment. He still took it as an achievement that he caught the swing. Suji himself was impressed as he moved faster than he usually did in their training matches. "You managed to catch my blade. Impressive." Romonus smiled and sighed. If you wanted, you could have cut through Blood Drinker and my head in one go. Suji pulled his sword back. Of course, but I have had over a century to perfect my sword skills. You have not, and still you caught my blade. Not just anyone can do that, and besides you're not a swordman. You're a spells word. You fight best with your power of destruction, gravity, and spells. If we went all out, you would do much better. Romonus smiled, as he did have the best teachers. All right, then Romonus, now time to help you improve. Following the testing spar, Suji spent another hour and a half instructing him on the art of the sword and the technique of Godspeed. Romonus' use of it was weaker, because while he was insanely fast, he never specialized in speed. Suji wanted him to rectify that in self-training, as he was just an instructor. It was up to Romonus to change it for his use. As for Rias, Suji gave her minimal instruction and left that up for Romonus. Suji turned to Rias and patted her head with a smile. You know, instead of having you just throw power of destruction at me, throw at your brother. He is immune to its effects, and he is an actual user. Rias smiled and nodded. Yes, Uncle Suji. Suji smiled in Romonus' direction, who merely waved him off. Suji vanished after that, leaving Romonus and Rias behind. He sighed and turned to Rias, who was looking much happier than before. What will you teach me first? The string method or the end? He snorted. Neither. Those are mine. You have to think of your own use of power of destruction. Oh, come on. He raised his head high, crossed his arms, and turned around. Nope. All mine. It took me years to get control over power of destruction to form it into thin threads. You don't have that time, so find a different skill. Plus, the end needs gravity magic, which you don't have. Rias looked down disappointed, as she thought both those moves were cool. Fine then, big meanie. What else can I do? He turned around and walked over to her side. Okay, then time to teach you. The first thing is that power of destruction does not want to listen. Surzex has trained for centuries in the art of having perfect control over it, while I have trained in shaping it into shape. Watch. Romonus released oceans of pod before rapidly turning them into hundreds of threads with ease. He did not use his hands this time, and merely used his mind to begin to control them. They spun around him, rapidly waiting for his command. Here is the thing, Rias. This method came about because of my method to control demonic energy. I already knew how to shape my energy into threads. This was just a step in that direction. You won't be able to do this because you have no control over your demonic energy. Rias tilted her head. Romonus waved his hand and dispelled his threads. You just launch waves of demonic energy at what you want to attack. Power of destruction is formed of demonic energy. Control the former, and you control the latter. Get me? Rias now wanted to ask a question she always wondered. Brother, why do you call demonic power demonic energy? You're the only one who calls it that. He sighed. That's what you think about it? I call it that way because it's energy. Why else? Regardless, to improve in using your pod, you need to get your demonic power under your control. He said power with air quotes because it was annoying. His way of calling it was better than anyone else. Rias snorted as she began to laugh at him. Okay, how do I control my demonic energy? She returned the air quotes, making him smile. I will teach you my old instructor's method, the fire method. Make a small fire of demonic energy in front of you. No hands to direct it. Rias looked in front of her and did as he said, doing it rather easily. Okay, now make it orbit around you. When she added a second one, she kept making them spin. Now, keep adding more. Make them take different orbits. Change the colors, do what you think needs to be done. Every devil is different, and your path won't be mine. She smiled. Thank you. He smiled as he dispelled the bounded field around them. It's fine. Anyway, I better get moving. I got a date with my fiancé today. You know how to teleport home? She rolled her eyes. Duh, I'm not a baby. He looked up at the sky, hearing that. Sometimes I wonder. Rias frowned, causing her fireballs to burst apart. Hey! He just laughed and teleported away, leaving her to her self-study. When she got her demonic energy under control, then he could help her better. Rias sighed before she sat down and got to work on the technique her brother taught her. I will show him. When I make my method, it will be better. As for Romonus, he teleported to the Astaroth clan's main mansion. While Latia was not from the main family, She was treated just as important as the main branch because of her uncle Ajuka Beelzebub. Now that Diodora was dead, the heir position of the Astaroth clan was open. In a light novel, Latia becomes the next heir following the death of the slimy prick. His rotten heart had been put to better use rather than being killed by Shalba. It still made him smirk when he felt the sheer purity and power of his energy after that ritual. The use of Diodora had been the right, but now there was no heir. Considering Latia was now engaged to him, the Gremory heir meant two things could happen. One where she married him and took his last name, or when they wed they ruled both clans with her, as the Astaroth clan head and him the Gremory head. Two heads marrying each other was unheard of, but he was not one to play by the rules. When he arrived at the mansion, he did so in front of the main manor, as each one was heavily warded and guarded. If he had tried to teleport in, the defenses would have torn him apart, or maybe they would not. He didn't want to risk it, so when he arrived, he did so in front of several guards. They turned to look at him as he used a Gremory circle. The head guard, a giant devil in full armor, spoke up. "Are you Romonus Gremory?" "Yes, that is me." The guard stepped aside and opened the door for him. "Enter. The young lady has been expecting you. You, lead him to her workshop." He pointed to a random devil soldier who saluted. "Yes, sir. Come with me, my lord." Romonus followed the guard, who began to walk him through the mansion. While they were walking, the guard turned to speak to him. "I feel like you should know. The clan is in mourning right now, so security is higher than usual." He tilted his head, acting surprised. "Why?" The guard kept walking, but he explained. "The heir, Diodora, is deceased. Assassinated." Romonus turned full circle to gaze at the guard in faked shock. "How? It's been just 2 days since I spoke to him. He was fine then." "We don't know. Lord Beelzebub has been here to see what happened, and all they found was a pile of ashes belonging to the heir. We have kept it quiet, as this is serious and we have no perpetrator. Some whisper it was Grim Reapers, others a death mage. But the smart No Reapers only obey Hades, and he has no love or care for devils. I even heard stories of an elder lich, but the few liches remaining keep to themselves. Your fiancée, Lady Latia, was not close to him, but still, I would not bring it up. Noted, and I grieve with your clan. I should see Lord Astaroth and Lady Astaeith to offer my condolences. Please do. The lady has not left her room since it was discovered, but here we are." He led Romonus to 2 heavy double doors made of enchanted metal. They hummed with many formations that Romonus asked about. "Is she trying to keep us out?" The guard chuckled. "No, keep her explosions in. Be careful. She is always making a new weapon, armor, machine, or whatever else comes to mind." Romonus pulled out his phone and first called her. Inside her workshop, Latia was wearing a heavy protective equipment, as from her fingernails a bright blue fire welded some metal plates together. She had turned the mech she was working on into a set of power armor as she got inspired by some more anime and video games she watched. However, when she phone rang with her special ringtone, she smiled and used telekinesis to bring it near her head. "Romonus, are you here? I am outside your workshop." She perked up hearing that. "Come in then. I've been waiting to show you what I've been working on." Outside, Romonus looked over at the guard, who smiled at him. "Those doors weigh 5 tons each. They are opened with some pistons. Just let me dash." "No need." "Huh." Under the gaze of the shocked guard, Romonus with ease pushed open the doors with just his raw strength. Latia turned when she saw the door opening on their own. Though when she saw it was Romonus, she smiled in admiration. "I can't wait to see him in this." She had someone to give this suit, but she now found a guy. Latia turned to the shock guard and waved him off. "You can leave." The armored guard gave her a deep bow and began to leave. "Of course." Romonus waved the guard off as he entered Latia's workshop. It was massive, much bigger than was expected, and all manner of items were spread all around. On the walls, she had many weapons she had created, many of sci-fi. He didn't recognize most of them for a while. Latia watched as Romonus looked around at the many items she had on display with a wondrous expression. Seeing him take an interest in her hobbies made her happy. "Does anything catch your eye?" He stopped walking in shock and childlike wonder as he rushed to a display. He put his hands on a magical glass as he saw something that he loved in his past life, and this one. He did not expect to see it here in any shape or form, but he did. Is that a Warhammer 40k power sword? Looks Black Templars if I have to say so. Image here. Latia's face began to perk up that someone knew of her favorite fictional universes. Not an anime, but truly fun verse. Yes, I modeled it after those swords. Is that weird? He cleared his voice as he looked a little embarrassed at this. Not weirder than this. He turned around and from his back released his two large wings. Seeing his wings, Latia had many questions because they did not look like the usual of their race, and second, because of the runic tattoos. She rushed over and began to run her hands down the glowing symbols on his wings. Really? You put Kornite tattoos on your wings? Why? He chuckled with a sheepish grin. Because they're cool, and I can remove them if needed, but they give my wings a few extra protections. Latia had to agree that they did look cool. If you ever get the chance, can you do the same for my wings? He nodded with a smile. Of course, my hobby helped me in this, as I made magical tattoo ink to place these runic tattoos. They increase the strength of my wings, defend them from magic projectiles, and they increase the flow of demonic energy through them. Latia pulled out a scanner from the spatial storage device she had on her neck. She began to run it up and down his wings a few times as she wanted to see what effects they had. When she looked at the device, she noticed that compared to regular devils' wings were humming with 250% more energy than was expected. Because their race could not fly on the muscle of their wings alone, as they used pure magic to fly. Romonus, on the other hand, could rely on the pure strength of his wings. His wings, compared to a regular devil, were massive, muscular, and demonic even. Very odd, but maybe he underwent a mutation or the like to cause his unique wings. Okay, I have so many questions as to why your wings look like this, but this idea of placing runic tattoos on them is smart. I wonder why no one else thought of it. He retracted his wings as he had a theory. Tradition. You and I seem to not be held back by the traditions of our race. This gives me an idea which I will need your help on. She raised an eyebrow. My help. He pulled out a set of schematics he had made a year ago. It was a theory he had based on a fantasy novel in his past life he read. Yes. First, I want to ask you a question. What is demonic power, or, as I call it, energy? She answered with ease. Mana warped by Lucifer and Lilith to suit our race. Exactly. When a devil like us absorbs mana from the atmosphere, it is converted into demonic energy. This is where the device I wanted to build would come to mind. Mana, when it is compressed or in high enough concentrations, will become fluid. She knew that much. Yes, it is used in human enchantments or formations. Even here at the clan, use it to fuel our massive defensive formations, but you know better than to touch it. In its pure state, mana becomes destructive. Exactly. I need that destruction. Here, he passed off the schematics over to her as she read through them. At first, it seemed like something that needed alchemy and spellcraft only, but then she saw why it would need tech as well. Still, this was a monstrous idea that only a madman would undergo. Romonus, this baptism, as you call it, could kill you. Pure, condensed liquid mana will tear the body apart. Even a devil like you will be torn apart by the power. He nodded with grim determination. Yes, which is why I plan to add a constant array of healing devices. I plan to use the high concentration of mana and the constant damage and healing to push my body and hopefully bloodline to a new level. A tempering of the body, if the Chinese cultivators are to be believed. And if my theory is to be believed, Lucifer and D both placed limitations on our race. Surzex and Ajuka are what I believe happens when our race gets past those limitations. That is not enough for me. I want to go past both of them. For that, I need your help. She walked off as she began to look through them, as it did look to be possible. The body grew under stress and constantly destroyed the body, only to heal it back with these potions, and healing arrays would in theory grant a much stronger body. Plus, this would affect not just the outside, but every part of the body. As she read through the schematics he had planned, she agreed. Fine, I will do it, but you have to prove to me you can even survive something like this. I'd rather not become a widow before we are wed. He smiled as he was truly thankful. He walked toward her and gently held her hands. Hey, if it works, you can use it too. She recoiled in horror. I'd rather not. He let go of her hands and shrugged. Your loss. She handed him the schematics, which he placed back in his spatial ring. Once that idea was out, he pointed at the power sword. Does it work as intended? Of course, thanks to my uncle teaching me, I can make something like this with ease. She walked over to the glass case and with a wave of her demonic energy, opened it up. She tossed the large sword to Romonus, who caught it with one hand. He channeled his demonic energy into the blade and watched as the shimmering power field hummed to life around it. Did you forge this blade? Because it is well made. Yes, it is just part of my hobby, as I sometimes need to make my own to make some sci-fi weapons when I get the inspiration. He turned off the power field as he pulled something from his spatial ring. It was his old sword which he had made to resist the power of destruction. He no longer needed it because of Blood Drinker and its immunity to destruction. Still, he still considered himself a good blacksmith. I also used to forge my weapons and armor. This suit I am wearing is just made of my demonic energy, but I do have a suit I tailored out of beast leather. This actually gives me an idea. If the two of us work together, we could in theory make weapons and or artifacts to rival sacred gears. Latia was not that confident in herself. She looked at the power sword in his hand, not convinced. You think so? He nodded. I do. Just because people in the past created powerful weapons that everyone wants doesn't mean we can either. Look at this. From his spatial ring, he pulled out one of his original swords. It was smaller than Blood Drinker a little, but the size didn't matter. This was made out of the cheapest, most common magical metal magisteel. I could have bought more fancy metals, but these were practice swords really. Here, when he passed her the sword, she almost dropped it because of the sheer weight. He had made it out of a big chunk of metal he compressed down with pure gravity. It allowed him to pack more metal into a smaller body to increase the durability. It did make it rigid, but because it was magical metal, he could reinforce it with demonic energy and power destruction. This is heavy. She was forced to place it down as she was not very physically strong. She ran her hand down the metal and began to use her methods to analyze it. This is weird. It doesn't seem like magisteel anymore. How did you make it? He sat down as he explained the process. I will show you. Just don't freak out. From his spatial ring, he pulled out a large see-through barrel. The barrel was 6 feet tall, and inside was a bunch of his blood. Floating in the blood was a massive chunk of magisteel. Magisteel, as it was named, was just metal that had been saturated in thick mana for centuries. The barrel had been enchanted with a time formation to allow the metal to soak up his blood's properties. Thanks to my alchemy, I have created a potion that allows me to recover my blood faster. This is the only way I could create a metal resistant to the power of destruction. Once it is ready, I will compress it with gravity magic as I have several more chunks of metal aging like this. Once I have enough, I then begin forging it in demonic energy-fueled flames and temper it in power of destruction. That is how I created my swords. She walked over and looked into the vessel, not disgusted or anything. How fast is the time in there? 50 times faster than out here. I had to commission that from the Ajura's clan, because while I am skilled at magic, time magic is still a tricky subject. I can teach you. Thanks to my mixed heritage, I have both Astaroth and Ajura's clan traits like you have the Gremory and Bale traits. I will appreciate that, but first let's see this power armor. She snapped out of her daydream as she walked him over to the massive suit of metal. She began to explain what she made it out of and why. To be frank, I also made this out of magisteel because of how cheap it is. I could buy tons of the stuff to use, and no one will bat an eye. If I did the same with mithril, adamantium, orichalcum, cold iron, deep steel, dark steel, or even meteoric, or the price would exceed what my clan would be willing to pay. Assholes. She let the last bit slip as they refused to allow her to buy those more expensive metals in bulk. Was a ton of orichalcum so bad? It really was, as it was even prized by gods with how rare it was. As for adamantium, it was mined and forged by the Norse dwarves they sold it, but at sky-high rates. He patted her back as he had the same issue. Can you believe my parents refused to allow me to buy 500 pounds of mithril? I wanted to forge an armor set from it, but they said that I didn't need it. It's not fair. I could have made a legendary suit by this time if I had that. She smiled that someone understood the struggle. You know what? Let's tell our uncle and brother. If we say we need them for our Rias search, we can totally make some new items. I can help you make your suit with some tech, and you can help me improve my power armor. He nodded with a child-look smile. Agreed. Since we got the time, let's bring in Seek Vera. With her help we might even make a titan. Latia began to giggle at the sheer joy she would have if she could make even a single Warhound titan. We have to. Even a single one would make me happy for life. For now, I want to try on the suit. He nodded as she pressed on the chest plate, causing the entire thing to shrink down into a handheld device. Just place it on your chest and hold still. He did as instructed and put it over his suit. Much like liquid metal, the entire suit began to grow over his entire body. Once it was on, his senses linked up to the suit's systems, allowing him to see even if his head was not in the helmet. He raised a hand and clenched his hand. He pointed at Latia and gave exaggerated line. Foul Xeno scum. She raised her hands and faked fear. Oh no, the Emperor's angels of death are here. Anyways, what do you think? He began to move in the suit and found that it was a well-crafted suit. It did not snag on his clothes or skin, and it did not feel heavy. I like it. How long has he been working on this? Not long. It's not the first I made, just the best I made. I plan to show my uncle to ask his permission to let me buy some rarer metals to make my own suit. I will need them as well. Seems we will need the help of my brother and your uncle. Latia and him were sick of cheap magisteel as they wanted stronger and rarer metals. They would need them anyway if they wanted to match the stronger weapons in the world. He didn't know what Blood Drinker was made of, but maybe with Vespera's help he could add some rare metals. If that happened, maybe his demon sword would grow even stronger than it already was. He would have to speak with her on the matter, though. Romonus spent the next hours with Latia as they shared their experience working on their creations. He even showed her his blood resurgence potions which he made because of how often he needed blood. She took a few off his hands, but in exchange she let him keep the Black Templar power sword she made. According to her, while it could be used in battle, the blade would not hold up against the kind of stress he could output. Instead, she wanted to work with him directly with much higher quality material to create a better sword and armor for him. It was a good idea, and Romonus certainly wanted to craft a set of armor he could in theory link to his soul like a sacred gear. If Azazel could create artificial sacred gears, he wanted to do the same, as he much rather rely on something he made with his bare hands, instead of borrowing power from God. Still, he could spend hours talking with Latia, but after spending over 8 hours with her, it was time for him to head home. He still had more self-training, as it was only 4 p.m. Romonus removed the power armor which he hadn't removed and handed it back to her. Here, I think it is time I head home. She seemed a little disappointed, but they had spent the better part of the day together. So soon? I was enjoying your company, but I understand. He smiled and held her hands again. They were so soft despite her using her hands in her crafting. I agree. We have known each other a few days, but I have loved every interaction. She gripped his hands back and returned the gesture. I agree. We should do this more often. She let go of his hands as he opened a magic circle under him to teleport home. Once he was in his room, he walked over to his bed before falling on it. He began to smile that his fiancée was such a wonderful girl. She was better in every way than the flings he had in his past life. Her hobby, in a way, was both a hobby and a power of its own. Imagining the day they would build a Psi Titan or something of the like got him excited. There was so much to do in this wonderful world when you were powerful. He sat up and looked over at Blood Drinker. He reached out for the sword and placed it on his lap. He reached out to Vespera, who answered him as usual. What is it? I wanted to ask if you have any idea what your sword is made of. Iron drawn out from the bodies of thousands of humans, angels, fallen angels, and devils. Really? No. He rolled his eyes. Lame. Vespera snorted. It is made of mostly adamantium, with trace amounts of orichalcum, if my memories are to be believed. Why? I wanted to ask if you could absorb more magical metals. I'm not sure. Try it if you want. His face became a bit softer as he gazed at the sword. I'd rather not cause you pain. She stayed silent for a while before answering. I'm always in pain, You have just made it hurt less. Just know, I appreciate what you do. When the link was cut, he reached into his spatial ring and pulled out one of his barrels of blood. He opened it up and turned off the time enchantment. With a wave of his hand, the large chunk of magisteel was pulled out and returned to his ring for later use. He dropped Blood Drinker into the blood, as it was the only thing that could ease her pain. When not in use, he could afford to let her rest in a vat of blood, but he would soon have to find enemies to slaughter for her. Maybe even humans from prisons who deserve death. Regardless, in a month he would get his evil pieces, allowing him to reincarnate others into his peerage. Until then, he had time, so he pulled out the soul Gremory his teacher gave him. It was back to self-study and self-improvement as usual. Romonus rarely stopped training for long, as while he could rely on his mere bloodline for everything and still reach the ultimate rank, going past it would be impossible. It was why he was so incredibly strong. Without question the strongest devil of his generation, because he was a training madman. The next 7 years were the most important years of his life, as puberty was a magical thing. His growth would rise exponentially as long as he pushed himself accordingly. Over the following month, he continued his physical training under Shatter, who pushed him even harder now. Shatter also trained him in the art of Tuki control, as his use of it was still new. Suji increased the intensity of his sword spars, and McGregor began to teach him darker and more advanced forms of magic. He also had to train in his abilities of power of destruction, gravity, and his alchemy hobby. He was being pulled in so many directions, but instead of buckling under the pressure, he grew under it. Thanks to the Grimoire on Souls, he was beginning to reach closer and closer to unlocking his soulscape. Thankfully, he didn't just train, as he would spend time with his family and the ladies in his life. He would often hang out with Latia in her workshop and even on a few dates. He didn't forget to keep in contact with Seraphal and ended up watching her favorite anime with her once. It was pretty good actually, and he even made sure to visit Miria, his favorite guard. She was less mad at him now, but she was still pissed that he made fun of her. Speaking of Miria, today was the day he was getting his evil pieces from Ajuka, so here he was. Before going to Ajuka's castle to get his pieces, he stopped by at Seraphal's. Outside, Miria was still leaning against her giant great sword, but when she saw him, her face recoiled in irritation. The blonde guard was still there, but she avoided looking anywhere but forward. Romonus walked toward the purple-haired beauty who gripped the handle of her sword tighter. When he arrived in front of her, her purple eyes were squinted in both vexation and anger. "What do you want?" Romonus cleared his voice before he looked her in the eyes. "I'm sorry." She looked away with a pout on her face. "For?" He smiled internally that she didn't hate him. "For making a joke at your expense." She looked at him and asked him the truth. "Did you mean it?" "No. You're too young to be worried about something like that." Her face turned bright red, so she avoided looking him in the eye. "In that case, I guess I can forgive you if you do one thing for me." He raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "Your phone number." He smiled as she handed him her phone so he could put his phone number. When he did, so he handed her phone back. She seemed quite happy, so he didn't try to ruin the moment. "You are gorgeous when you smile, you know." Miria let go of her sword and held her face with a rather adorable expression, if he had to say so. "Really? I don't look old." He shook his head. "No, of course you don't. Who told you that? Every time I tried to get a boyfriend, they all said I was too old." "Am I old?" Romonus thought about it, as she was 875, which meant she saw the end of the Great War and fought in the Civil War. Plus, as a powerful ultimate class devil, her age was not all that great. She still had an impressive level of power, but he did wonder why she worked as a guard. "No, not at all. If it makes you feel better, I like that maturity. Some might say dash." She covered his mouth with her hands. "Don't say it." He smiled and did not call her a MILF despite what he wanted to. "All right, call me all right. Are you free today?" No. Tomorrow is my day off." He smiled as he leaned forward. "In that case, want to go on a date with me?" Miria held her face in embarrassment, but she did seem happy about it. "Okay, if you want to go with this old lady, I guess I can go." He snorted and gently cooped her face. "Don't call yourself old. Age is just a number for our kind." He let go of her face and teleported away toward Ajuka's castle. Miria placed her hands over her chest, feeling her heartbeat. The last time she had gone on a date had been 75 years ago, and the guy called things off because he thought she was unfeminine. She then proceeded to throw him through 5 walls, breaking every bone in his body, but he survived. What a little brat. Wonder what he will look like in 4 years. As for Romonus, he teleported in front of Ajuka's castle, which was located south of the city. Unlike Seraphal's castle, which only had 2 guards stationed outside, Ajuka's castle had none. At least stationed outside, because Ajuka was an inventor, so he relied on his inventions for his security. Outside, 2 giant golems of metal turned to gaze at Romonus. One of them aimed a giant naginata at him before speaking in a distorted robotic voice. State your identity. I am Romonus Gremory, and I am here to receive my evil pieces. Both golems scanned him a few times before they moved aside. Identity confirmed. Enter. Both golems together pushed open the giant enchanted doors behind them and allowed him to walk in. When he walked in, he saw a woman sitting at a desk. He walked toward her and saw she had the green hair of the Astaroth clan. She smiled professionally when she saw him. Lord Gremory? Romonus is fine, but yes. She looked into her computer file before nodding. Okay, Lord Beelzebub is waiting. Just stand in the teleport circle here. He stepped into the teleport circle that was near the desk. When he did so, she explained how this worked. Evil pieces were created by Lord Beelzebub, but they are not kept here in Lilith. He keeps the monoliths in a separate space. No one knows the exact location too. That way they are safe from sabotage. Are you ready? Yes. She pressed a key on her keyboard, causing the circle to surge with mana. In a flash of light, Romonus was teleported away to the site of the evil Peace King monoliths. It was here where every high class and noble devil received their pieces. When he arrived, Ajuka was already waiting for him. The Devil King gave a rare smile to his nephew-in-law. Romonus, I have heard only good things from Latia about you. She seems to be falling for you quite fast, may I add. Whatever you are doing, keep doing it. Yes, uncle. It is also wonderful to see you. On another note, I am sorry for your loss. Ajuka sighed. Thank you. I was not close to Diodora and never spoke to him personally, but his death was so odd. Turns out he was not as kind as we believed. His peerage were all abused and terrified of him, though they couldn't tell us what happened when he died. Romonus pushed for information, wondering what Ajuka knew. What have you found out, if you don't mind me asking? Ajuka then dropped a bombshell, which worried Romonus. I know what killed him. I just kept it to myself. The Harvester did it. Please tell me the Reaper guy is okay. You mean the greater spirit of death of the Spirit Realm? Ajuka nodded. Yes. He was summoned here to do the dead. Who knows who Diodora offended so much that they summoned that thing? Your teacher spoke of him? Yes. McGregor said the Harvester has never been contracted, and I planned on trying. If you succeed, ask him why he did it. I tried to summon him myself, and he refused my summons. Regardless, we aren't here to talk about that. You're here for your evil pieces. Romonus saw that there were 5 total monoliths. Why are there 5? Each one has different levels, as not every devil is equal. Evil pieces are formed of both the user's demonic power and crystals from the Agrias Island. Very few devils reach the ultimate class or further, so most use the first 2 or maybe the 3rd. The 4th is for the more exceptional ones, while the 5th is for the elites. You can use the 5th one. The 5th monolith was larger than the rest and made of higher quality crystals. He walked toward the monolith, and when he was in front of it, he turned to Ajuka. Do I just channel my energy into it? Ajuka nodded. That one will take a lot, so be careful. No problem. Romonus placed a hand on the crystal monolith before he began to surge power into it. In moments, the monolith began to glow brighter and brighter as Romonus kept feeding it his demonic energy. His reserves were massive, and the sheer purity of his energy was causing even Ajuka surprise. His energy was almost as pure as Surzek's, despite him not being a super devil. Will he take the leap as well? Romonus did not stop feeding the monolith his energy until he was running on empty. He had overfed the monolith, which was a hard feat to achieve, but it was worth it. The monolith gathered all the demonic energy he sent into it and began to form his 15 pieces. Thanks to how much energy went into forming them and the purity, they were much stronger than the prices of other devils. He would need fewer pieces to reincarnate stronger people, but that was not the thing that shocked Ajuka. 3 mutation pieces? You are either insanely lucky or blessed. Romonus had lucked out and gotten a mutation queen, rook, and pawn, which was insanely lucky. How rare is mutation pieces, uncle? Only 1 in 10 devils have even a single one. You having 3 is 1 in 1,000 chance. I also need to inform you of a little-known trait I added to the evil piece system. Your pieces are linked to you, so unsused pieces will grow accordingly. Even after they are used, as long as you and your servant grow stronger, they can mutate to match that new power. I fully expect you to form a peerage of monsters. Romonus smiled before he waved. He dismissed his pieces, which vanished in a thin air. He already knew his first peerage member would come to him. Akino Hamijima would make his first bishop, as the queen piece was not useful for her. All in all, today had proven to be a wonderful day. After Romonus collected his evil pieces, he did not delay long, as he did not have much reason to stay longer. He had nothing against Ajuka, as the man was technically his new uncle, but he did kill his relative, so he did not want to stick around. Though he didn't just leave, he had to be polite. Uncle, it has been nice talking to you. Anytime you can give me a lesson to improve. Ajuka gave a small smile. Next time I give Latia a lecture, come along. I might as well show I am the better teacher. It was still incredibly lucky of you to receive 3 mutation pieces. I can't wait to see what you will do with them. Romonus did not consider it luck, as he got those because of the power he had earned. He was 11 years old, and his power was growing by the day, thanks to the great mentoring he received. A big part still took raw talent, which he had in spades. Combine that with hard work, which made him into a little monster. See you, uncle. With practiced ease, he created a teleport circle and returned to his mansion. As usual, he always chose his room, but he noticed something. The memories of his original coordinates were messed with. It did not seem that Ajuka did it himself, but rather the whole separate space had such an effect. Clever, that way no one can know where the core of the evil piece system is. Heaven had God, Gregory has Azazel, and we have Ajuka. Seems fair. Regardless, now that he had his evil pieces, he could begin to travel the world. He still wanted to get Akino before doing anything, as her lineage as a cadre was beyond valuable. He knew more than she did about herself, as he was not going to allow her to wallow in her trauma. It might be cruel, but he could and would not allow her to waste her holy lighting. He needed it to train his resistance to holy energies, and she would be an asset when he invaded the vampire realm for Valerie and Gasper. I should hold my horses as long as I get Tobio, and Akino vampires will be the least of my worries. That isn't even counting me. He shook his head as he walked out of his room. He decided to go tell his mother, as he knew she would have far more free time than his father. If his father was not involved in the duties as the lord of House Gremory, he was off fucking his dime a dozen maids. While Romonus could respect the idea of such a large harem, each one was cheap. They were copies of each other with only different faces and hair colors with the same bodies. He shook his head at the idea of collecting a harem only for their looks. Regardless, he eventually arrived at his mother's office. It was where she often went to deal with the business calls, or simply kept to herself. "Mom, I got good news." When he opened the door and walked in, he saw his mother sitting with her head on the desk. When she heard him, she tilted her head a little to gaze at him with her purple eye. Romonus was quite surprised, as his mother looked depressed. Her hair was disheveled. She looked exhausted and like she had not slept in days. That changed when she saw him, causing her to perk up. She rubbed her eyes a little as she tried to play off. "Romonus, sorry you had to see me like that. Did you get your pieces?" Romonus did not answer as he walked over to her side. He reached out for her disheveled hair and with a bit of magic straightened it out for her. "Mom, you look terrible. What happened?" She sighed as she rested her chin on her arms. "That obvious?" He nodded with worry in his eyes. "Yes, I have never seen you like this in my life. What can I do?" She sat up and waved her hand to close the door to her office. She locked and warded everything so nothing got out. She clenched her hands as her face began to pull back into an expression of pure loathing. Do you remember Markina? Romonus nodded with squinted eyes. The black-haired bimbo? The one who was always in father's office, sucking him off or fucking him. Venelana began to chuckle at the accurate description. The very same. I thought I was the only one who disliked her. He shook his head. I despise her kind the most. What did she do? Venelin took a deep breath as she broke the news. Your father in his infinite wisdom got the slut pregnant. I just found out from him myself last night. Romonus's face quickly warped into an expression of barely concealed wrath. His mother had explained to him that she and Zeodicus had one rule for him to have a harem. He could not get them pregnant, and that one rule had been broken. What was he thinking? He wasn't as we can now see. Markina knew that was the rule, and either she, Zeodicus, or both had to use magic to prevent pregnancy. But that did not happen, as now she was with a child. Seeing his angered expression made her feel glad he was on her side. Everyone in their society or social circle would congratulate and applaud him for his seemingly increased fertility. Her expense, because it was the most important condition for him to have a harem. It was not respected, and now here they were. If the child happened to be male, it would be lucky to be born of House Gremory. It still made her smirk that she knew for a fact that the child would not have her clan trait. It was what made Surzex, Romonus, and Rias deadly. Without the power of destruction, the child sired by a commoner devil like Markina would probably not even have the Gremory trait. She almost felt bad, but not enough. That is what I am saying. I am livid beyond imagination. We had one simple condition. I manage and gather women for his harem, and he ensures they do not fall pregnant. But it seems that was not enough. Though, I should have kept it to myself. He shook his head. No, this is wrong, and he knows it. Venelana leaned back, which caused her large breasts to push against her gown. For once, Romonus did not have an interest in enjoying the sight. Venelana covered her eyes as she remembered the birthday ball. Love of my life, dance with me? Fucking asshole. He will probably announce it soon to the family anyway. It's been just a month since your birthday, and he springs this news on me now. After saying that to me? And I feel for hook, line, and sinker. Romonus waved his hand and formed a chair next to her. He sat down and leaned over to rest his head on her shoulder. She appreciated the gesture that her son was here to comfort her. Don't blame yourself, Mom. I always wonder how you felt about Father's harem. I guess you weren't on board. Venelana's purple eyes began to grow wet as she wrapped her arms around him. He returned the embrace as she vented to him. I just grew used to it. When I married him, he didn't have a harem. But 150 years into our marriage, he asked me permission to have a harem. I did not agree to it at first, but I relented after he kept asking for the next 10 years. I allowed him to have 5 at first, but then it became 10. Now the number is almost 200. I have grown overwhelmed and sick with him as it seems he has less and less time for me. I know you don't care, but the last time we were intimate was 12 years ago. That was how you were born. For a time, I was beginning to question our love, but the dance we had seemed to awaken old feelings. I thought he remembered our vows, and I felt like the young women he married. Turns out, I am just a fool. He held her tighter as he finally heard her true thoughts. How long have you felt this way, Mom? You should have said something sooner. Venelana smiled in the firm but gentle hold of her second-born. It had been long since she had received even this from her husband. For the last 400 years, I held solace that I was the only woman he had children with. But now even that is lost to me. Markina, that whore. My one fucking condition, and they fucking broke it. Waves of power of destruction surged from her, destroying everything it touched. She held him even tighter, but as Baal descended, he was immune to the effect. The chairs they were sitting on were safe, but everything else began to crumble. I didn't know you felt this way. I will be on your side, always. Thank you. He just held her tighter as she wanted to reduce her office to ashes. However, Venelana calmed herself as she didn't want to affect his view of his father. Don't hate your father because of me. This is my burden as a female. Devil, we suffer in silence. Romonus, I know you want a harem. When you do decide to get a harem, don't follow the same route as your father. Appreciate every single one and don't neglect their hearts like he has mine. He nodded. I promise. She leaned over and rested her head against his. As they shared this moment, he asked her a question he had. What will you do, Mom? She sighed. What can I do? I'm not Hera. He chuckled as that was true. His mom was far better than the goddess of marriage who gets cheated more than anyone else. True. Should I put some pressure on Father? Despite his status, he is quite weak. Maybe place an impotence curse on him for a decade. Venelana giggled as that sounded fun. Teach me the ritual, but don't bother. I could fold him like a twig with a finger if I wanted. Don't forget, young man, I am and have always been the strongest woman born to Clan Bale. Your talent came from me. Your father just provided the Gremory trait to you. Venelana leaned in and kissed his cheek. Come on, teach me that spell. You will learn not to piss me off. He smiled as he pulled out his journal and flipped the page to a very mean curse to the male kind. The impotence curse was made by a witch when her husband cheated on her. She did not remove this curse for the rest of his life, and the poor wizard was driven mad. When he showed Venelana the curse, her face pulled back into a very happy smile. Did McGregor teach you? He nodded. He taught me many spells, even ones you would not think would come in handy. This one is apparently a good prank one, as it can be broken by the caster whenever. She spat on the idea. I won't release him until 20 years have passed. I will show him. This would not hurt his father other than his pride, so he happily taught his mother the curse. As she learned it, he could not help but notice how beautiful his mother was. The way her pretty face looked when she focused on the book, the way her dress pulled attention to her enormous breasts that bounced with her movements. He was forced to look away as she was far too sexy for her own good. How could his father not please her first was beyond him. He just hoped she didn't notice the way he looked at her from time to time. But as if to inform him that she did, she let one of her breasts press against his arm. Romonus did not let it slip he liked that, but she looked quite happy to tease him. Incest was very common among their race, and these taboo relationships between relatives became more common with age. One became more open to things like this, especially when devils got older. In just a few short decades, she would be 1,000 years old, so why not be open to a few more things? She had time to spare, and her son would be growing into such a handsome young man. She could afford to let things slip in this direction, right? For now, this light teasing was as far as it got. Once Romonus taught his mother the impotence curse, she thanked him and kissed him again on the cheek. Something she could pass off as a motherly act, but Romonus was no child. He had been a 17-year-old playboy in his past life, meaning he was technically 28. Nice. He smiled and kissed her back before leaving her alone. Good luck, Mom. She smiled and waved him goodbye. Thank you. Take care. When he closed the door, his smile dropped into an expression of pure wrath. Veins were popping all over his face. Markina. He took a deep breath before from his body he released his mana sense. He searched the entire mansion and quickly found both his father and Markina. His father was in his office alone for once, while the maid in question was far from him this time. Romonus released his fists and began to move rapidly through the mansion. As he did, he would pass some maids and servants who instantly got out of his way. It was very rare that he would get mad, but when he did, it was better to stay the fuck out of his way. He even passed the ladies of his father's harem, who all recoiled at the sight of him. Some of them had been part of the harem for only a few years, while some had been here decades, if not centuries. Markina had been telling all of them about her pregnancy, which most knew was not going to end well for her. The child would be fine, as Venelana was not a monster, but she was not safe. Apparently, Romonus was going to get at her first. Some of them who were close to her for a few seconds considered speaking up for her, but they chose wiser than that. When he finally reached Markina, the black-haired maid was tidying up her room with a big smile on her face. She was humming a happy tune as she sometimes rubbed her belly because she only had her looks and body. She had no wealth, status, bloodline, or clan, so being the mistress of a lord was the highest honor she could have. However, at that moment, Romonus slammed the door open, causing Markina to jump up. She turned around and was met with one of the most terrifying sights, Romonus Gremory in his enraged state. His eyes were glowing a deep purple, and the sheer pressure of having an ultimate class being glaring down on her was like death was in front of her. What the fuck were you thinking? Markina dropped her broom and backed away to the very back of the room. When she touched the wall, she recoiled in horror, as even if Zeodicus was here, he could not compare to his son in strength. Zeodicus was only a high-class devil thanks to his noble lineage, as he had rarely trained. Romonus was a whole class ahead of his father, and his entire focus was on her. "Young master, what do you mean?" "I dash." Romonus waved his hand and shut the door behind him. He walked toward her and placed his hands behind her head, making her look into his glowing eyes. "I know about the baby." Markina got a terrifying premonition. "Wait, this is Dash." Romonus cut her off. "You knew the rules. You can join the harem, and you ensure you do not get pregnant. It was the only condition, and you broke it. Whose idea was it? Yours? My father? Who?" Markina held her hands over her belly in fear. "It was mine. Don't blame your father. I talked him into it." He punched the wall behind her, shattering it. She closed her eyes in terror as she looked at the floor. If devils had a god, she would have been praying. Was what? What were you expecting? To gain more status? Control the clan? Authority? You were trying to create a competitor for my tile as heir. Was that it? Markina shook her head in horror at the last part. Many heirs would do anything to secure their positions. If Romonus felt challenged by her child, he could rip it out of her right now, and no one could stop him. No, I couldn't dream of that. Then what was it? Markina fell to her knees as she tried to calm him down. "I wanted nothing. I just wanted to be a mother. Please don't take my baby. I beg you, young master. I took care of you as an infant. I just want to have a child of my own. If it pleases you, I can leave, disappear from your sight, and raise it alone. Just don't take it from me." She hugged his legs as she kept crying. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked up into his unrelenting purple eyes. He snarled as he looked up. "God damn it." Instantly, he was with a head-splitting headache, which he endured with pure will. Markina, though, recoiled as she held her head with both hands. He snarled, "This was making me feel a certain way, and it was not good." Now he felt like a monster, as it was true that she had breastfed him as a kid. It was only in the last 5 years that he and Mother began to think negatively of her, because of how often she took Zeodicus's time. "I'm not going to hurt your child. That is still my siblings. I'm just mad you hurt my mother's feelings. You are lucky we are not monsters, or that would have been the first thing we would have done. And I do remember you always looking after me specifically, so consider yourself forgiven. By me, you still have to get my mother's forgiveness. You will give birth to the child, and then you and every member of the harem will receive an anti-pregnancy rune from me. Do I make myself clear?" She nodded with a thankful expression on her terrified face. She hugged his legs again. "Yes. Anything. Thank you, young master. Okay, let go of me." When she let go, Romonus snorted and grabbed her arm to lift her. "If you thought I was mad, my mother will make your life hell after the birth. So you better raise that kid with all the love you can." "I will, young master." Romonus took a deep breath as he walked off. When he was gone, Markina fell to her knees and cooped her belly. Her face was covered in tears as she promised herself to avoid incurring the wrath of Venelana even more. She stood up to beg for forgiveness so her baby could have the best life. Because if her child chooses to challenge Romonus for the position as heir, it will die. Romonus was the strongest devil of his generation by far, and it was suspected that in a few short years, he would become a second Surzex or beyond. Venelana, now that she had the punishment for her negligent husband, was much happier. She was going to be using this in the coming days, but her good mood was ruined when Markina herself entered her office. She wondered what she could have wanted, but her falling on her hands and knees was not what she expected. Markina begged for forgiveness and tried to appease the lady of the house. She explained that after she turned 250 years old, the time she spent with Romonus and Rias had made her desire for motherhood grow. She had convinced Zeodicus to forego protection, and by some luck, the red-haired devil now had a 4th child on the way. Venelana was not happy to see her, but she did forgive her. As Romonus said, they were not monsters, just very angry. Venelana made it clear that she was to take it easy until the birth, but then she would be worked like a dog as her assistant. She did need someone to help her out in managing all the Gremory business. Markina was over the moon that she would not be fired and got to keep her child. In the end, this was a learning moment for everyone, except Zeoticus, who would soon be left with a harem he could not touch. The next day, Romonus did not wake up early like he usually did. He slept in for a little longer and woke up around 8:30 a.m. It was a good thing someone like him did not need to go to school if they did not want to. His learning under McGregor was considering enough teaching, so he was fine to do as he pleased. When he woke up, he jumped out of bed, and with magic, he removed his clothes and rapidly got dressed into his John Wick suit. It was drippy, and considering he made it from his demonic energy, quite durable. He still wanted to get one professionally made from expensive materials, but for now, this was fine. He waved his hand through his hair and fixed it up a little. He played with his tie as he had a date today with Miria, who finally agreed to go with him. He did not blame her for waiting this long as he was 11, but at this point, he was at the point of rapid growth. A few years were quite fast at her age, so she was willing to wait for him to grow up. She had refused his advances for the past 2 years, after all. Once he felt he was well dressed, he pulled out his phone and gave her a call. Miria was currently having a panic attack as she was pulling every outfit from her wardrobe from her past. She had a secret that only Seraphal and a few people knew. She was the very last living member of Clan Amdusias. She came from a line of the first-generation Amdusias, but now she was all that remained. All the wealth of her clan was hers, but she rarely touched it. Still, now that she was going on an actual date, she kept pulling out outfit after outfit with none of them being good enough. Too fancy, too simple, gross, too revealing. No, too concealing. What am I going to wear? Wait, why am I taking this so seriously? He is a kid. I bet I can throw on anything and he will like it. That line of thought lasted a few seconds before she remembered that Romonus was no brat. He was mature beyond his years and looked nothing like a young boy. Thanks to Devil's innate control over themselves, his face looked quite mature. Who am I kidding? Romonus isn't child. He will care. She cooped her face in horror, but that became even worse when she heard her phone go off. She looked around and saw it on her bed. She jumped over, and when she saw it was Romonus calling, she shrieked. No! She grabbed it and answered as fast as she could. Hello, Romonus. Calling already? Romonus on the other end chuckled. Well, I wanted to see where you wanted to go. I have a few ideas. We can go to the capital, or we can go somewhere else. The Gremory estate is in the middle of a very large town, so we could spend time down here. There are a few nice places I can think of. Miria's brain froze for a few seconds before she agreed. Sounds good. Great. See you at 4. When he hung up, Miria dropped her phone before panicking even more. I agreed to go to his territory. What will his mother say? She imagined Lady Venelana, thinking she was a fox who devoured young boys. However, it was Romonus who was the wolf devouring the fox. Miria suddenly smiled as she remembered something. Wait, why am I scared of Venelana? I fought in the Great War, damn it. Which she did as well. Oh well, if we fought, I bet I'd win. In all honesty, she was not so sure herself, because Clan Amdusia's trait was considered one of the greatest at raw destruction. Demonic lightning was the opposite of Barakiel, holy lightning.
Hello, everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.